Jill Nishin, a hard-working corporate laborer, tragically died from a heart attack due to excessive overtime. However, his life did not end with his death. Instead, he was reborn into a new and better life. In his past life, he had struggled to make ends meet, but now he found himself as the prince of a prestigious noble family, ruling over an expansive territory covering hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. Despite his newfound status, challenges loomed over his territory. Starvation was widespread, armies constantly waged war over land, and, most dangerously, traitors lurked within his domain, ready to betray him at any moment. The question now was how he would navigate this world of magic, leverage his past life knowledge, and harness the power of technology to secure his rule. The story begins in an ICU, where doctors were frantically working to save a patient. The patient, later revealed to be Jean Lishin, a mechanical engineer, acknowledged his impending death. He reflected on his life, stating that due to relentless overtime, he had suffered a heart attack. He admitted that his life had never been good. After losing his parents in a car accident, he had grown up as an orphan with no one to care for him. Jean Lishin recounted that after graduation, he had worked continuously for 20 years, struggling with long hours and meager pay. His financial struggles were so severe that he couldn't even afford a taxi to his home. He lamented that his life had been filled with hardships, leaving no time or money for personal happiness. He noted that while the doctors were desperately trying to save him, he was utterly exhausted and longed for a deep, uninterrupted sleep. As he succumbed to his fate, he expected his suffering to end. However, upon opening his eyes, he found himself in an extravagant room. Confused, he initially assumed that the hospital had mistakenly placed him in an expensive suite, and he worried about the financial burden. But before he could process the situation further, a mysterious system message greeted him, welcoming him to the magical continent of Aldera. Overwhelmed by pain and confusion, he noticed his reflection in a nearby mirror and was shocked by his transformed appearance. He had never looked so refined and handsome. A week later, he had acclimated to his new reality. He had learned that he had been reincarnated as Reign Edgar, the third son of Grand Duke Alferia. Unlike his past life, where he had struggled constantly, this life was one of privilege. His elder brother and sister adored him, and he had never faced hardships. As the youngest in a noble family, he was treated with great respect and care both inside and outside the household. Reign came to the conclusion that fate had granted him a second chance. His previous life had been miserable, devoid of enjoyment, but this new existence was filled with luxury. He learned that this world, known as the Old Continent, revolved around magic, which played a role in everything from military power to daily activities. The continent was home to the Caradorial Empire, the largest human kingdom, along with various non-human species such as elves and dwarves. The Edgar family, to which Reign now belonged, was a powerful noble house governing a vast territory of 300,000 square kilometers with a population of 1 million. Being part of this noble lineage granted him fine clothing, exquisite food, and even a personal maid to attend to him at all times. Reign found it hard to believe that such an extravagant life was now his reality. One day, his maid, Leah, informed him that his father had summoned him. Reign entered his father's office, where the butler announced his arrival. Grand Duke Alferia permitted him to enter. As he stepped inside, Reign curiously asked his father about the reason for the meeting. Alferia questioned Reign, asking if he understood why he had been summoned. Reign admitted that he did not. His father then revealed that Reign had now come of age and it was time for him to manage his own territory. He instructed Reign to decide where he would like his land to be located. Excited by the prospect, Reign eagerly asked if he was truly being given his own territory. Alferia smirked, remarking that he had expected Reign to be unaware of such matters. He explained that all members of their family eventually took control of their own domains. The land assigned to Reign was in the northwest region. While relatively safe compared to other territories, it faced significant challenges such as a scarcity of magicians and ongoing food shortages. Alferia emphasized the importance of Reign's responsibilities. He warned that while the Caradorial Empire was currently stable, the future held uncertainties. It was now Reign's duty to prepare himself for what lay ahead. The empire was on the brink of facing numerous challenges, and it was all due to the royal family's decline. Reign reflected on his father's words, agreeing internally that he was absolutely right. The Caradorial Empire's royal family was weakening day by day. In fact, many noble families had surpassed the royals in power. This deterioration, Reign thought, stemmed from rampant corruption within the country. Some nobles had even allied with foreign nations, plotting daily to undermine their own homeland. Ever since his reincarnation, Reign had been experiencing the life he once saw in his dreams. However, he realized that true happiness did not stem from luxurious possessions but from the people who genuinely cared for him. He was determined to protect those who looked after him and ensure their safety. Meanwhile, Alferia observed the situation with concern. he felt that Reign was still too young to grasp the harsh realities of the world. Even if he understood some aspects, his knowledge was limited. Alferia decided not to burden him unnecessarily and reassured him, saying that as long as their elder siblings were around, he had nothing to worry about. Reign then turned to his father and asked if solving the food crisis in the northwest would lead to improved security in the region. Alferia responded, explaining that the food problem was far too vast to be resolved in one attempt. It would take significant time and effort to make a difference. As Alferia spoke, he thought to himself that Reign was still a child, unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of the challenges they faced. Feeding a few people was one thing, but providing for hundreds of thousands was an entirely different matter. He found it naive that Reign believed such a massive problem could be solved quickly. However, Reign had his own thoughts. He knew his father likely saw him as an ignorant child, but what his father didn't realize was that he was not an ordinary person. He possessed knowledge far beyond his time, thousands of years ahead. He understood how civilizations had evolved and was determined to use those advanced methods to bring about change. Reign confidently declared that his father need not worry about the food crisis, as he would soon find a solution. The narrative then shifted focus to a city in the northwest territory of Grand Duke Alferia. This city faced significant challenges, primarily due to its vulnerable borders. To the north, it bordered the lands of Grand Duke Soren. To the west, the Elves' path began, and to the south, a vast ocean stretched out. Surrounded by adversaries, the city was frequently attacked. The constant conflicts had ravaged its lands, leading to widespread poverty and famine. The population had dwindled as many were lost to war, and now, even the enemies saw no benefit in attacking such a weakened region. Meanwhile, Reign approached this territory, contemplating the immense work needed to revive the city. If he wished to spark an industrial revolution, he would require a vast labor force. However, the city's population was alarmingly low, and those who remained were weak and malnourished. He realized that increasing the population would be essential to his plans. Fortunately, Reign had an advantage. His system, recently, he had gained a scanning ability that allowed him to assess a person's attributes. He had already tested it on his family members to understand its capabilities. With this ability, he would be able to surround himself with competent individuals and weed out those who might cause trouble. Leah, one of Reign's attendants, noticed that he seemed preoccupied. Remembering Alferia's instructions, she reminded herself that she had to keep a close watch on him to ensure he didn't cause any trouble in the territory. She silently hoped that he would refrain from any reckless actions, as that would be beneficial for both of them. The scene then shifted to Essling City, where the city lord, Lord Eldrick, convened with his subordinates. He announced that Grand Duke's son was set to arrive in the city. This development would make it difficult for them to continue their usual dealings. Concerned, he asked for guidance on their next course of action. One of his advisors reassured him, suggesting that the young noble was unlikely to be overly strict, since he was the youngest in his family. He had likely never faced any hardships in his life. A masked figure in the group then cautioned that they could not act against Reign without direct orders from their master. Until further instructions arrived, they would have to remain patient. Despite this, the city lord was visibly anxious. He reminded them of the numerous fraudulent activities they had committed, hinting at the potential consequences if their wrongdoings were exposed. The masked man expressed his confidence that even if the young master discovered their tax fraud, they would have nothing to worry about. He scoffed at the idea that the young master would be intelligent enough to read financial reports or understand their contents. Turning to his accomplice, he instructed him to provide the young master with any records of his choice, assuring him that the boy would be none the wiser. He reminded his colleague that they had used this trick on many young masters before, all with great success. However, he cautioned that relying solely on this method was unwise. Just then, the city lord acknowledged the instruction and agreed to proceed as planned. The masked man then remarked that the time for the young master's arrival had come. He urged his companion to greet the boy and ensnare him in their scheme, emphasizing that if they could bring him under their control, their plans would proceed smoothly. The city lord nodded and affirmed his understanding. Meanwhile, another figure reflected on Alferia's past misdeeds. He thought to himself that Alferia had committed numerous wrongs, and now it was her children who would suffer the consequences of her actions. At the same time, Reign had halted his journey just outside the city. Observing the land before him, he noted that it was fertile but largely barren due to the scarcity of people. He reasoned that without cultivators, the land had become completely useless. Turning to Leah, he requested a map of the area. As he studied it, he quickly deduced the cause of the problem. If he could construct a canal and connect it to sea, the situation would improve significantly. As he contemplated this solution, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a distressed voice nearby. A girl was pleading with her father to stop gambling, explaining that the money was meant for her mother's treatment. She warned that if he lost the money, they would have no means to help her mother. Despite her desperate pleas, her father remained unmoved, demanding that she hand over the money immediately. He insisted that he would win big this time and change their fate forever. Through tears, the girl reminded him that he had made the same promise countless times before, only to bring them further into poverty. She accused him of using gambling as an excuse to avoid work and take responsibility, lamenting how he was ruining their family. Her father, enraged by her words, raised his hand and threatened her, warning that if she refused to comply, she would regret it. Before the father could strike, Reign swiftly intervened, delivering a powerful punch. However, the force of the blow numbed his own hand. Reign winced in pain. Leah, alarmed, scolded him for acting recklessly. She reminded him that if he needed someone beaten, she could have done it for him, or they could have summoned an armorer. Fighting in such a manner, she insisted, was not suitable for him. Reign, acknowledging his impulsiveness, assured her that he would consult her before acting next time. Turning his attention to the girl, Reign asked if she was hurt. While he considered how to deal with her father, he sternly addressed the man, questioning how he could contemplate gambling away money that could save a family member's life. He accused the father of stooping so low that he was willing to harm his own daughter for financial gain. The father, now nervous, asked who Reign was and why he was interfering in their business. Reign dismissed the question, stating that his identity was irrelevant. What mattered was what the man chose to do next. He issued a grave warning: if he ever found out that the man had returned to gambling, he would not hesitate to end him. He described in chilling detail the torment he would inflict before finishing him off, ensuring that his fate would be a lesson to others. He then dared the man to gamble again, promising dire consequences if he did. Terrified, the man broke into tears and fled, repeatedly apologizing and swearing never to gamble again. Reign watched him go, amused by how easy it was to intimidate people. He decided to use his system to check whether the girl had sustained any injuries. As he did so, the girl approached him with gratitude. She tearfully thanked him, explaining that if he had not intervened, her father would have taken the money and lost it all, leaving them with nothing for her mother's treatment. She expressed how deeply indebted she was to him, emphasizing that he had no idea how much he had helped her. System introduced the girl as Lillian Aldry, a 17-year-old with average physical stats. However, Reign quickly noted that she has special farming skills. He said that the girl has holy body of agriculture. If she were to engage in any work related to farming in the future, the results would be significantly better, revealing the full potential of agriculture. Reign mentioned that he had been planning to go to town to find a doctor for his mother. Coincidentally, they were heading there as well. He invited Lillian to join them. However, Lillian hesitated, expressing her concerns. "No, I cannot come with you. You are a noble, and I am just a commoner. My dirty clothes might spoil your carriage," she said. Reign dismissed her worries with a reassuring smile. "This is just a carriage, a means of transport. If it gets dirty, what difference does it make? Look, I am here, so there is no need to worry. You can come with us. Besides, I have some questions I would like to ask you." He then shifted the topic, voicing his curiosity. "Everyone knows how poor this city is, and with so many problems going on, it makes no sense to have a casino here. That's why I want to know everything about it." Lillian explained, "Last time, Grand Duke Soren attacked us, causing immense damage to the city. Many soldiers lost their lives. As soon as the war ended, a devastating flood followed, ruining our crops and washing away our fertile soil. Life here was never easy. But after these disasters, it has become even more difficult. Many people struggle to afford even a single meal." Reign observed the city and agreed with Lillian's assessment. The conditions were indeed dire. However, he recalled that his father had sent a substantial amount of money to aid such people. He frowned, wondering where all those development funds had gone. The city lord should have used that money to help the people. If it had been properly utilized, the situation would be much better, he thought. Turning to Lillian, Reign asked, "Do you know where the mansion of the city lord is located?" Lillian nodded. "Yes, I do." Just as she was about to provide directions, a man on horseback suddenly galloped forward at high speed, shouting, "Move aside, you wretched insects. If my horse crushes you, it will be your own fault." Leah quickly reacted, pulling Reign to the side just in time. As she caught her breath, she thought, whoever that person was, young master could have been seriously hurt. Reign, struggling to breathe, gasped, "Leah, let go of me. I can't breathe." Releasing him immediately, Leah looked at him with concern. "Master Reign, are you hurt? If you are in pain, let's go to the doctor first. Everything else can wait. I can't risk your health." Reign smiled reassuringly. "Thanks to you, I am absolutely fine. If you hadn't been here, I might have been seriously injured." He then turned to Lillian. "Do you know who that man was?" Lillian nodded. "Yes, that was the young master of the Edwin family. Earlier, you asked me about the casino. Well, all the casinos in our city belong to his family." Reign's eyes narrowed. "So, all the casinos are theirs. That means they must have a lot of money." Lillian sighed. "Yes, they are incredibly wealthy, but you saw how they behaved towards others." Ron pondered for a moment. "For a while now, I have been wondering where all the development funds went. I remember very well that my father sent a large sum of money to this city. It seems I don't have to search any longer. I know exactly where all the money has gone." He turned to Lillian with determination. "Take me to the casino." "Where is it?" Lillian looked alarmed. "Master, please don't go there. Everyone who has gone to the casino has been ruined. They are ruthless and deceitful. If you fall into their trap, they will destroy you." Reign reassured her. "Don't worry at all. They won't be able to harm me." Lillian, observing his confidence, couldn't help but wonder, how powerful is this young master? He seems so sure of himself, but I have no idea just how strong he truly is. Soon, they arrived at the casino. Reign took in the sight before him. "This is excessive," he muttered. The building was enormous, and 2 guards stood at the entrance, watching every passerby with keen eyes. Reign knew that if he had to lead the people towards the palace, the casino had to be destroyed. Easy ways always stopped people from working hard, and this place was no exception. It no longer served its true purpose and had instead become a den of corruption. As he stepped into the casino, he was met with the sight of countless gamblers. Some had lost all their money and were desperately begging for more chips, while others celebrated their victories with reckless abandon. Observing the scene, Reign reaffirmed his belief: so long as the casino remained, the people here would never work properly. Even those who did would likely return each evening only to lose all their earnings. Leah approached him and informed him, "Master, as per your orders, our soldiers have surrounded the entire casino. We await your next signal to attack." Reign instructed her to wait. "If we want to catch a big fish, we need to be patient." As he moved further inside, the casino manager approached him with a courteous smile. "Sir, what game would you like to play?" he inquired. Reign responded nonchalantly, "I'm not particularly fond of gambling, and this is my first time here. Show me something simple." "Of course, follow me," the manager said. "Before playing, you will need to purchase chips." As Reign stepped forward to buy the chips, a man handed him 2 for free. "This is our policy," the man explained. "We offer the first 2 chips for free so our guests can experience something different." Reign saw this as his chance. He tossed the dice and declared, "I'll bet on a low number." Around him, the casino patrons smirked, convinced that another unsuspecting gambler had fallen into their trap. They planned to strip him of everything he had before sending him away empty-handed. But when the dice landed, the result shocked them: 4 sixes. "That means a high number," someone announced. A wave of disappointment rippled through the crowd as those who had bet on lower numbers realized they had lost. The casino manager put on a sympathetic expression. "How unfortunate," he said. "You lost in the first round, but young master, you were so close to winning. Try a little harder, and I'm sure you'll succeed next time." Reign, however, was unimpressed. "This game requires no real effort. It's boring. I won't continue playing." Then, as if to dismiss the matter entirely, he added, "Besides, I'm hungry." Just as he was about to leave, the manager stepped in front of him. "Wait a moment, sir. You cannot leave without paying." Reign raised an eyebrow. "I haven't taken anything from you. Why should I pay?" The manager's smile turned sly. "I gave you 2 chips, and you used them. Since you lost, you now owe us for them." "But you said they were free," Reign countered. The manager scoffed. "A nobleman like you making such a cheap joke. Since when has anything inside a casino been free? Nothing comes without a price." He continued, "Each chip here costs 100 gold coins. You took 2. And since I personally served you, you owe us 250 gold coins. I know it's a hefty amount, but I'm giving you a chance. Either pay up or leave something valuable behind, otherwise, you won't be walking out of here." Before Reign could respond, Lillian stepped forward, furious. "You're lying, master. Don't believe him. The chips here are worth a single silver coin, not 100 gold coins. If that were the case, there wouldn't even be a game. My father plays here every day. I know exactly how much everything costs." The manager's expression darkened. "Who let this brat in? I had everything planned, and she's ruining it. Guards, get rid of her. These lowlifes have no place in my casino." Before the guards could act, Reign kicked the manager, sending him crashing onto a nearby table. The impact caused a pile of chips to scatter across the floor. As soon as the chips spilled, chaos erupted. Greedy gamblers lunged for them, shoving and even fighting one another to grab whatever they could. Watching the scene unfold, Reign shook his head in disappointment. These people are truly hopeless. Guiding them onto the right path will be a challenge. At that moment, an authoritative voice rang out. "Who dares to cause trouble in my casino?" A man from the Edwin family had arrived, flanked by his men. He sneered at the commotion. "It looks like you all are tired of your miserable lives and have chosen to die in my casino." Reign smirked inwardly. Finally, a big fish has taken the bait. The time has come to end this charade. The sight of Edwin's man terrified the gamblers who had been scrambling for chips. The young master of the Edwin family issued a cold command. "Beat them. Teach these worms a lesson." His men wasted no time. They descended on the gamblers, mercilessly striking them down. "These fools never learn," one of them spat. "How dare they think they could take what isn't theirs?" As the beatings continued, the rest of the patrons shrank back in fear. The young master addressed them with a smirk. "Let this be a lesson. Behave, or you'll meet the same fate." Lillian clenched her fists. She knew it was her fault, Master had helped her save her mother, and yet she had knowingly led them into danger. She had been a coward for too long. It was time to stand up. Stepping forward, she declared, "You're wrong. You can't scam people while my big brother is here." Gasps filled the room. The gamblers stared at her as if she had lost her mind. No one who challenged the young master of the Edwin family lived to tell the tale. The young master sneered, "Oh, and what exactly are you going to do about it? Speak up, I can barely hear you." Lillian raised her voice, "Listen carefully, your casino scams everyone, ruining families. My family was already destroyed, but with Big Brother here, I won't let the same thing happen again. You can't bully him, he's a better person than all of you combined." Varslow, one of Edwin's enforcers, laughed mockingly, "You think you can stop me? Let's see how long you last." He lunged at Lillian, intending to strike her down. She braced herself, ready to accept her fate, but as time passed, she realized the blow never came. Opening her eyes, she saw Reign standing in front of her, gripping Varslow's wrist tightly. Reign pondered over the information before him. Varslow Edwin, a 23-year-old man, had average basic stats. However, two aspects of his profile stood out as particularly concerning. His loyalty was a mere 5, indicating his selfish and untrustworthy nature. Additionally, his specialty was brutality, a trait that made it evident the Edwin family was firmly opposed to them. Reign concluded that the Edwin family could not be trusted and might have to be eliminated soon. Meanwhile, Varslow confronted Reign, stating that he had moved ahead while Reign had remained behind. Reign considered the implications of this statement. Varslow trying to obstruct him, he reflected on the natural order of power, recognizing that the strong would always stand in the way of others. He admitted that he might not be a significant threat to Varslow at the moment, but emphasized that, like his people, he too had his own strengths. Varslow, smiling, observed that it had been a long time since he had encountered such an interesting person. He demanded to know Reign's name, questioning who he was to stand against him in his own city. However, Varslow quickly dismissed the need to know Reign's identity, stating that it wouldn't matter because no one could do anything to him. At that moment, Reign clapped his hands, and his soldiers entered the scene. He reiterated his belief that power determined control, and since he was the most powerful in that situation, victory was his. The scene then shifted to a grand banquet hall, where a celebration was being held in honor of Reign's arrival in the city. The hall was filled with the city's elite, powerful businessmen and nobles, all present to welcome him. Many had brought lavish gifts, and one noble even went so far as to offer his daughter to Reign. Lucas observed the gathering with skepticism. He found it absurd that everyone was acting as though some great ruler had arrived when, in reality, Reign was just another noble like them. The practice of offering daughters and expensive gifts seemed foolish to him. However, he had already discussed his concerns with Sickle and had devised a plan. His goal was to keep Reign under control by ensnaring him in a web of alliances and ensuring he remained preoccupied with their affairs, rather than interfering with the city's politics. Lucas also wondered about the whereabouts of his son, Varslow. If Varslow happened to encounter Reign, it would be interesting to see what kind of news he would bring. Lucas knew that their city lord was a cunning individual, and no matter how well crafted his plans were, there was no guarantee that Reign would comply with them. As the gathering continued, an announcement was made. Grand Duke's son Lord Reign had arrived. The head of the Raven family stepped forward, presenting a gift and expressing his hope that Reign would appreciate it. Meanwhile, the head of the Rooster family offered his daughter, suggesting that Reign could take her as his mate if she pleased him. Reign, addressing the assembly, acknowledged the gifts in the presence of the city's influential figures. He then signaled for a discussion, prompting the servants to bring in a large blackboard. As the blackboard was set up, the attendees murmured in confusion, unable to decipher its significance. Reign stepped forward, explaining that the diagram on the board was the blueprint for a dam, a project he had devised earlier that afternoon. He detailed the construction plans and encouraged the nobles to examine them closely. The head of the Raven family admitted his unfamiliarity with the concept of a dam, while the head of the Rooster family speculated that it had something to do with water, though he was uncertain of its purpose. Reign reassured them, stating that he would explain everything. He requested a map to illustrate his point. As the map was brought forth, he elaborated on his study of the city's geography. He pointed out that their city frequently suffered from floods, which inevitably led to crop destruction. However, by constructing a dam, they could control the water flow, storing it during the rainy season and utilizing it during droughts to sustain agriculture. Lucas found Reign's proposal fascinating. If implemented correctly, it would allow them to grow crops year-round, leading to substantial financial gains. He realized that they had underestimated Reign. He was far more strategic than they had assumed. The head of the Raven family inquired why Reign was presenting this idea to them. Did he require their assistance? Reign confirmed that he needed financial support, explaining that construction projects were costly. The nobles, however, protested. They lamented their financial struggles, claiming that the city was poor and that even they, as nobles, had little wealth to spare. Lucas, watching the exchange, noted that while Reign was not particularly shrewd, he was undeniably naive. The nobles of Essling City had long drained its resources like parasites, and expecting them to provide funding was foolish. Reign, unfazed, declared that if the nobles lacked funds, it was not an issue. He had other ways to secure money. He revealed that during his arrival, he had noticed a grand building and discovered it was a casino. After just one evening of gambling, he had amassed 50,000 gold coins. Furthermore, he had learned that numerous casinos operated within the city. By increasing the taxation on these establishments, they could generate significant revenue, enough to fund the dam's construction. Lucas observed Reign carefully, realizing that while he might not have the same cunning as some of the city's schemers, he possessed an unyielding determination and a willingness to take decisive action. Perhaps Reign would be a more formidable player in the city's power struggles than he had initially thought. Nobles were wondering whether the casino had been raided. If that were the case, it would mean no earnings from the casino that month. They considered the situation. There were only a few casinos in the city, and the one in which they had invested had not yet been targeted. It seemed that with the arrival of the master, he's setting his sights on new endeavors, unaware that in doing so, he had provoked Edvin family. Now, Edvin was certain to find himself in serious trouble. Lucas reflected on the situation. Initially, he had no intention of taking action, but now that this man had chosen to interfere with him, he would have no choice but to destroy him. Addressing Master Reign, Lucas pointed out that operating a casino was not illegal in their empire and expressed his confusion over Reign's reasoning. He accused Reign of unjustly raiding their casino despite their adherence to the territorial nation's regulations. According to Lucas, Reign had violated these laws by conducting the raid. The other nobles voiced their agreement, insisting that Master Reign had overstepped his authority. The room quickly filled with dissenting voices against Reign. Many of those who had earlier been offering gifts were now turning against Reign. Lucas observed the shift in sentiment and thought to himself that the young master was indeed naive. He had no understanding of how influence worked in this city. Everyone present at the gathering had ties to the casino business, and if Reign disrupted their operations, he would face resistance from all of them. Reign, however, remained unfazed. He reminded them that only a short while ago, he had requested donations for a dam project, and they had all pleaded poverty. Yet, now that he had taken money by his own means, they were suddenly outraged. He acknowledged that operating a casino was permitted but pointed out that none of them had paid their dues, neither the casino taxes nor personal profit taxes. Essentially, they had all been engaged in theft. Giving them a choice, Reign declared that they must either admit their wrongdoing and forfeit everything or abandon the casino business entirely. If they refused, he would ensure their compliance by force. Lucas, attempting to challenge Reign, questioned whether the Grand Duke was aware of these actions. He implied that if the Grand Duke found out, Reign's authority would be in jeopardy, and he might not be forgiven. The nobles echoed Lucas's sentiments, accusing Reign of abusing his power. Reign, however, dismissed their accusations, calling them hypocrites for citing laws established by his own father. He then ordered the soldiers to bring forth the individuals he had captured. As the captives were presented, Lucas was startled to recognize two familiar faces. They were his son Varslow's guards, who were rarely far from his side. If they had been caught, it could only mean that Varslow himself was in trouble. Reign turned to Edwin and asked if he recognized the two men. Edwin, maintaining his composure, denied knowing them, claiming he was seeing them for the first time. Reign, unfazed, explained that the question had been simple: either Edwin knew them or he did not. He then recounted how earlier that day, while roaming the city, these two men had attempted to assassinate him. During the attack, they had boasted about their influence, claiming that no one in the city could stop them. Intrigued, Reign had wanted to uncover the powerful figure backing them, and in this city, no one held more influence than Lucas. Turning back to the room, Reign asked if anyone else could identify the two men and reveal whom they served. The assembled nobles exchanged uneasy glances, all aware that these men were Varslow's followers. Wherever he went, these guards accompanied him. If they had attacked Master Reign, it could only have been on Varslow's orders. The realization dawned upon everyone: Lucas was trapped, with no apparent way out. Lucas desperately hoped the captured men would remain silent, as any confession from them would unravel everything he had built. He watched anxiously as events unfolded. Then, in a dramatic move, Lucas stepped forward. Drawing his dagger, without hesitation, he accused the two men of committing an unforgivable crime, attacking the son of Grand Duke. He proclaimed that if anything had happened to Reign, the entire city would have suffered the consequences. Declaring that they must pay for their actions with their lives, he swiftly executed them on the spot, leaving the entire room in stunned silence. Feigning remorse, Lucas turned to Reign, begging for forgiveness. He claimed that his anger had taken out of control when he heard about the assassination attempt, leading him to act rashly. If Reign wished to punish him, he would accept it. Reign, however, merely smirked. He commended Lucas's unwavering sense of justice, remarking that if only everyone shared his will, the city would be a better place. With heavy sarcasm, he declared Lucas the greatest noble in the city. Lucas, playing along, humbly thanked Reign for his praise, insisting that he had merely done what anyone in his position should have. Reign then turned the situation on its head. He pointed out that Lucas had eliminated his men before the true mastermind had even arrived. Without missing a beat, he ordered his soldiers to bring in the real culprit. As the guards dragged Varslow into the room, the young noble seethed with rage. "You bastards, if you have any courage, face me openly. You don't understand. My father is the greatest noble in Essling City." Once they were free and he had spoken to his father, he warned them that escaping from there would be nearly impossible. He reminded them of the immense power his family wielded in the city. Lucas wondered Varslow had been caught. It all made sense to him now. He had been unable to meet him since the morning. He recalled instructing his wife to befriend Grand Duke's son, yet here he was, at odds with him instead. Varslow turned to Reign and accused him of killing his servants. He declared that it had been a grave mistake and vowed that, just as he had killed them, he would meet the same fate. He challenged Reign to free him and see how he would torture him in return. Reign smirked. "Your dreams are quite big." That not only did he want to kill him, but he sought to torment him as well. He found their way of thinking rather intriguing and offered them a chance to speak further if they had more to say. Varslow remarked that it was generous to give him opportunity to speak. He boasted that no matter how much trouble he had gotten into, there was no noble in the city who would dare stand against them. Varslow assured Reign that if he had declared he would be killed, his fate was sealed. They warned him not to take their words lightly, or he would be making a dire mistake. Reign chuckled, clearly entertained. He commented that he had encountered many courageous individuals before, but none had ever spoken to him so boldly. He was amused that this man dared to look him in the eyes and claim that he could kill him. Turning to Mr. Lucas Edwin, he expressed his admiration for the man's audacity and inquired about Edwin's thoughts on him. At that moment, Varslow was taken aback to see his father standing there. With a laugh, he finally understood the reason behind Reign's confidence. "You are flaunting power and connection to Lucas, but do you know what's the relation between me and Lucas Edwin?" Mr. Lucas, meanwhile, ordered him to be silent and to get on his knees immediately. He declared that having a son like Varslow was an embarrassment to him. Seeing his father behave this way left Varslow utterly confused. He hesitantly asked his father what he was doing, reminding him of all the praise he had spoken of him earlier. He was baffled by the insults his father was now throwing at him. Lucas stepped forward and forced Varslow onto his knees, demanding that he apologize. He asked if he failed to understand the gravity of the situation. Addressing Master Reign, he acknowledged that his son had made a grave mistake but pleaded for leniency. He insisted that his son was young and naive, promising that such a mistake would never happen again. In desperation, he offered everything he owned, his wealth, properties, and power, in exchange for his son's forgiveness. Varslow, recalling his father's instructions to befriend Grand Duke's son, realized he had done the complete opposite. He began to question whether Reign truly was as powerful as his father had claimed. Trembling, he hesitantly asked if Reign was indeed the son of the Grand Duke. Reign scoffed and sarcastically asked if Varslow had lost his senses. He questioned whether Varslow had ever considered that a common man could never hold such authority. Varslow, realizing his mistake, banged his head and begged for forgiveness. He admitted to making a terrible mistake and insisted that if he had known Reign's true identity, he would never have acted as he did. Desperate, Lucas spoke again, pleading with Master Reign to spare their family. He swore that the entire Edwin family would serve him loyally like dogs, obeying his every command. Reign smirked and remarked that everything they had earned over the years now belonged to him. He assured them that if they handed it over, he would spare their lives. Lucas immediately expressed his gratitude, relieved that they had been given a chance. However, he secretly harbored resentment. If he was to be ruined, he saw no reason to let others escape their fate. He decided to expose the city leader, Edric. Turning to Reign, Lucas claimed that while he had stolen taxes and money, Edric had committed a far greater crime. He revealed that Edric had allied with outsiders and was plotting against his father. If there was anyone guilty of treason, Lucas argued, it was Edric, not him. The nobles murmured among themselves, shocked by the revelation. They questioned whether their city lord was truly planning a rebellion. If so, it was a crime of the highest order. Before Lucas could continue, Reign silenced him. He admitted that he had been prepared to forgive him, but Lucas had made a critical mistake. He accused him of attempting to drag others down with him. Reign expressed his distaste for such cowardice and declared that he no longer intended to spare Lucas's family. He commanded the guards to seize them all, ensuring that their entire bloodline would be wiped out. Smiling, City Lord reflected on the situation, thinking that everything was unfolding exactly as he had predicted. He had always known that no matter how intelligent the young master became, he would remain a fool, both reckless and impulsive in equal measure. Meanwhile, City Lord stepped forward and expressed his gratitude. He told Master Reign, "I am absolutely loyal to our Grand Duke, and you have not tested my loyalty. Instead, you have done me a great favor." Reign reassured him, advising him not to worry. He stated that he had complete faith in City Lord, adding that if he had any doubts, he would have kept a close watch over the city. He emphasized his certainty that City Lord would not betray them. As Reign gazed at the City Lord panel, his thoughts took a different turn. He pondered how anyone could trust a person whose defining trait was greed. He noted that this individual's loyalty rating was merely 15, a glaring warning sign. Recalling Lucas Edvin's parting words, he concluded that they had been completely insincere. The scene then shifted to the study room, where Reign was seated. He calculated that they had amassed 100,000 gold coins from the casino, an amount equivalent to 2 years' worth of taxes from Essling City. He lamented that no tax revenue had come from the city in years, not even under the pretense of a development fund. He knew that his father had regularly sent funds, yet the local nobles had squandered it all in the casino. Just then, Leah entered with a tray. "Master Ron, I've brought you black tea. You've been working for so long, you should take a break," she urged. Reign, still engrossed in the records, responded, "Leah, as I was reviewing these records, I discovered just how corrupt the nobles here are. They've plundered us for years, and not a single one among them is honorable." Leah hesitated before voicing a concern that had been on her mind for some time. She reminded Reign that Lucas had publicly declared the Eldrick a traitor, and she doubted that such a statement had been made lightly. She feared that if the Elder truly was a traitor and decided to rebel while Reign was in the city, it could place him in grave danger. She asked whether they should inform Grand Duke and the others. Reign, however, remained composed. He assured Leah that he understood her concern but insisted that there was no need to worry. He acknowledged that the Eldrick was indeed a treacherous individual who would inevitably betray them. However, he explained that he was deliberately biding his time because he had devised a dangerous plan to teach him a lesson. Until his plan was fully in place, he would not allow Eldrick to act against them. Leah, puzzled by his words, asked, "Young master, what exactly are you planning to do?" Reign explained that he had yet to identify all those working for Eldrick. Without knowing his true enemies, he admitted that he was still vulnerable. He reasoned that if he acted impulsively, the consequences could be disastrous. He feared that his own recklessness might plunge the entire city into chaos. However, he found it advantageous that Eldrick currently perceived him as a fool. As long as they believed he was oblivious to their schemes, he could continue executing his plans unnoticed. The next day, at City Lord Mansion, Guildmaster Malcolm of the Mage Guild arrived at the hall for a meeting. Elric addressed him, explaining that there was a significant reason behind his summons. He informed Malcolm that Grand Duke's younger son had arrived in the city and, in an effort to prove himself, had begun insulting the Mage Guild. He pointed out that the newly issued budget for the dam explicitly stated that mages could not work on the project, questioning whether this was not a blatant insult to their guild. Upon hearing this, Malcolm reacted with outrage. He exclaimed that the decision was a grave injustice and made it clear that even though the young man was the Grand Duke's son, he had no right to disrespect the Mage Guild. He declared that their contributions were the backbone of the country and that excluding them from the dam's budget was utterly unacceptable. Meanwhile, Eldrick watched the unfolding conversation with amusement. He had initially assumed that persuading the mages to join his cause would require a substantial bribe, but now he realized that mere manipulation had sufficed. He noted that Malcolm had already fallen into his trap and would soon storm off to confront Reign. Smirking, Eldrick concluded that this would weaken Reign's position even further. True to Eldrick's expectations, Malcolm declared that he would not tolerate such injustice and resolved to speak with the young master directly. However, as he left, an elder mused to himself that he had managed to ignite yet another conflict. He smugly observed that Reign had unwittingly turned the Magic Guild against him. While these people had never been particularly loyal to Reign, his actions had now cemented them as his enemies. Eldrick thought to himself that Reign was now entirely isolated within the city. On the other side of the city, Reign was focused on his future projects, sketching out structural blueprints. Leah entered and informed him that Malcolm, the guild master of the Mage Guild, had arrived to meet him. Reign, caught off guard, wondered who this visitor could be. As soon as Reign entered the guest room, Malcolm confronted him. Without preamble, he accused Reign of having disrespected the Mage Guild upon his arrival in the city. He expressed his deep offense, making it clear that the guild members were outraged by the insult. Reign, taken aback, calmly asked, "Mr. Malcolm, what exactly are you referring to? As far as I recall, I have not insulted the mages in any way. The Mage Guild works for the benefit of our people, so why would I go out of my way to antagonize you?" Malcolm, brandishing a document, insisted that Reign stop pretending. He pointed out that Reign himself had issued the recruitment letter, which explicitly stated that mages were barred from working on the dam project. He demanded to know how Reign could possibly be unaware of a directive he had personally authorized. Reign admitted that he had indeed issued the document. "You must be aware that I am overseeing the dam's construction," he stated. "I have carefully selected the best individuals for the job. How does that amount to an insult to your guild?" Malcolm, growing increasingly frustrated, retorted, "Your letter explicitly states that mages and even elderly workers are not to be employed in this project. Do you see us as so useless that you would exclude us outright? Your decision has deeply provoked my people." As Malcolm ranted, Reign observed him with growing skepticism. Inwardly, he wondered if the guild master had lost his mind. Reign had clearly stated in his plans that he was building a dam and that no laborers would be allowed inside. Frustrated, he questioned the necessity of mages in this endeavor. "Does he expect me to have the mages do the physical labor?" he thought. If that's the case, then Malcolm is truly an idiot. Malcolm, however, was not amused. "Master Reign," he said sternly, "you must reconsider this decision. If you refuse to allow mages to work on the dam, our entire guild will stand against you." Reign found Malcolm's words amusing. He's making bold claims, he thought. Let's see just how loyal he really is. Activating his scanning ability, he examined Malcolm's stats. His loyalty rating was an impressive 82. This level of loyalty is not something that wavers easily, Reign noted. Someone must have incited him against me. Trying to de-escalate the situation, Reign addressed Malcolm calmly. "Mr. Malcolm, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. I have no intention of insulting mages. You asked for my reasoning, so let me give you 3 clear reasons why I am not employing mages inside the dam." He continued, "First, mages have limited mana, which means they cannot work continuously throughout the day. As a result, the dam would not be completed on time. Second, hiring a mage is significantly more expensive. For the same cost of hiring 1 mage, I could employ 10 laborers who would accomplish much more through sheer physical effort. Lastly, mages already have stable employment within the guilds and do not lack financial security. Commoners, on the other hand, struggle to find work. As a landlord, it is in my best interest to provide jobs to those who need them the most. This benefits both me and the people." Malcolm was unconvinced. "Master Reign, you seem to have forgotten the way this world operates. Here, power lies with those who possess magic. Only a rare few can become mages, and by refusing to employ them, you are making a costly mistake." Reign shook his head. "Yes, it's true that only a select few can become mages, but this land belongs to me, and the work is mine to allocate as I see fit. No law dictates that nobles, wizards, or commoners must be treated differently. Now that this city is under my control, I intend to ensure that everyone understands this. Civilians and mages are equal. There is no justification for discrimination. Neither group is superior or inferior. I hope you can understand my perspective." Malcolm's expression darkened. "Master Reign, you're making a grave mistake. Becoming a mage requires immense effort. If you fail to recognize the difference in their status, you will make enemies of the mage community. And trust me, that is a conflict even you cannot afford." Reign remained unfazed. "Mr. Malcolm, I respect you, which is the only reason you're still standing here. Given the way you have spoken to me, my maid would have already dealt with you otherwise." Malcolm's eyes widened in alarm as he realized that Reign's maid had silently drawn a dagger and was now pointing it at him. "Master Reign," he stammered, "there's no need for this. I apologize if I overstepped my bounds. Please, forgive me." Observing Malcolm's unwavering loyalty, Reign's suspicions deepened. Even now, his loyalty remains unchanged. That means he's not acting out of personal gain. Someone has manipulated him into opposing me, he deduced, and I can already guess who. This must be Edric's doing. That man excels at using others as pawns. With a wave of his hand, Reign signaled his maid to lower the dagger. "Let him go," he commanded. "Malcolm is not the enemy here." Malcolm bowed his head in gratitude. "Thank you, Master Reign." Just then, the system's voice echoed in Ren's mind. "Host, you have completed your first mission. You have successfully used your scanning ability on 10 individuals. Your new quest is to recruit 5 high-status individuals to work under you. Additionally, a new function has been unlocked. You may check it at your convenience." A satisfied smirk crossed Reign's face. Finally, the system's missions are progressing. Time to see what rewards await. Meanwhile, outside the hall, Edric was waiting for Malcolm. As soon as he spotted him, he rushed forward. "Guild Master Malcolm, what happened? Did Master Reign understand your point?" Malcolm let out a weary sigh. "No, there's nothing more to discuss. Master Reign refused to listen and forced me out. I barely made it out of there alive. I have no intention of provoking him any further." Edric, however, was undeterred. A sly grin spread across his face as he leaned in conspiratorially. "Guild Master, I have a brilliant idea. If you follow my plan precisely, I guarantee Master Reign will not only change his mind but will also start treating you with the utmost respect." Malcolm hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. "What exactly do you have in mind?" The city lord, however, remained undeterred. With a sly smile, he assured Malcolm that while their initial plan had failed, he had an even better idea in mind. He confidently stated that once they implemented this new scheme, Reign would change his stance and even treat Malcolm with respect. However, there was one crucial task Malcolm needed to undertake. Malcolm, skeptical, questioned the feasibility of the plan. He pointed out that Reign's initiative was immensely beneficial to the commoners. Given their lack of employment opportunities, they were bound to accept Reign's generous offers. The city lord, however, smirked knowingly and countered that it wasn't about whether the commoners would accept the work, it was about ensuring they couldn't complete it. If the workers failed, Reign would inevitably become frustrated and dismiss them. Sensing Malcolm's hesitation, the city lord reminded him of his magical abilities, suggesting that he use a spell to exhaust the commoners, rendering them incapable of fulfilling their duties. Malcolm, shocked at the suggestion, initially resisted. He acknowledged that while he was displeased with Reign's actions, he had no personal vendetta against him or the commoners. To curse innocent workers seemed extreme and unjust. The city lord, however, pressed further. He dismissed the commoners as lazy and ungrateful, arguing that their struggles were self-inflicted. If they truly wanted to survive, they could farm, hunt, or find other means of sustenance. Instead, they relied on noble generosity. He then painted a dire picture. If the commoners succeeded in proving their worth, Reign would continue hiring them, reducing opportunities for mages like Malcolm and his peers. In such a scenario, the Mage Guild's influence would wane, leading to widespread unemployment among the mages. Malcolm, torn between his morality and his loyalty to his guild, found himself deeply troubled. As the city lord's words sank in, he realized the implications. If the commoners gained favor, the nobles would have no reason to depend on mages for labor. After much deliberation, Malcolm reluctantly conceded. With a heavy heart, he asked the city lord what exactly needed to be done. Meanwhile, in the heart of the city, a large notice board had been set up. The townspeople gathered around, reading the announcement in disbelief. The notice stated that the new lord was hiring workers, offering 9 to 5 works with 3 meals a day and 10 copper coins in daily wages. It seemed too good to be true. Among the crowd, a man voiced his skepticism. He questioned when nobles had ever been so benevolent. No matter what they promised, in the end, they only looked out for themselves. Another man agreed, suggesting that this was likely a trap. He recounted past instances where nobles had tricked the commoners into working for free, including the recent construction of a casino. The Edwin family had convinced them to invest their earnings in gambling, leading them to lose everything they had rightfully earned. One by one, the townspeople began expressing their doubts. The consensus was clear: nobles didn't care about commoners, and this offer was likely just another deception. Just then, Lillian, who had been listening to their complaints, could no longer stay silent. Stepping forward, she reprimanded them for speaking ill of their new lord despite knowing so little about him. She asserted that if people did not have knowledge about something, they should refrain from speaking nonsense about it. She recounted an encounter she had with their lord a few days prior and expressed her admiration for him. She described him as the most noble person she had met, emphasizing that he genuinely cared for every single citizen. According to her, he had promised to transform the entire city and improve the lives of its inhabitants. However, her words were met with laughter and skepticism from those around her. The crowd murmured among themselves, wondering who she was. Some speculated that a noble had deceived her, and they dismissed her claims, believing she was too naive to understand the stark difference between what nobles said and what they actually did. Meanwhile, Lillian stepped forward and approached the person in charge of filling out forms. She firmly stated that she wanted to apply on behalf of her father for the dam project. The man filling the forms responded, saying that while they could accept her father's application, they could not accept hers. Confused, Lillian questioned why she was being denied. She insisted that she was not to be underestimated just because she was a girl. She asserted that she was strong and capable of performing the same work as her father. The man clarified that it was not a matter of personal opinion but rather a directive from Master Reign. He explained that they were not permitted to hire individuals who were underage. Judging by Lillian's appearance, he estimated that she was under 18, which made her ineligible. He added that hiring an underage worker would put them at great risk. If Master Reign found out, he would not hesitate to punish them severely. He continued explaining the work conditions, stating that she could not participate in the construction of the dam. The working hours were from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., totaling 8 hours per day. Workers would not receive 3 full meals daily, and their wages would be calculated on a daily basis. Once a day's work was completed, they would receive their payment, which amounted to 10 copper coins per day. He invited Lillian to ask any questions if she had concerns. Otherwise, she could proceed with filling out the form to officially become a part of the dam project. Turning to her father, Lillian urged him to work diligently and not be lazy, reminding him that this was the young master's project. Her father reassured her, promising that he would no longer gamble away their money as he had in the past. He vowed to work wholeheartedly to support their family. He acknowledged that young Master Reign had stood up for the common people and declared that he could not betray such a person's trust. He then advised Lillian to stay at home and take care of her mother, mentioning that their uncle also needed someone to look after him. Hearing this, the man filling the form suddenly interjected, asking for clarification on Lillian's father's words. When asked if there was an issue, the man inquired whether his wife was seriously ill. Lillian's father confirmed that she was in poor health but insisted that he was there only to discuss work, not his family's hardships. The soldier then revealed that he had not been asking about work but had instead been offering assistance. He explained that since Lillian's father had not asked any questions earlier, he had not been able to provide this information sooner. He happily informed him that young Master Reign had arranged accommodations for the workers. Given that the dam project was located far away, commuting daily would be extremely difficult. To address this issue, young Master Reign had provided temporary quarters for workers and their families. The soldier assured Lillian's father that as long as he remained employed on the dam project, he and his family could stay in the provided housing. Once the project was completed, they could return to their homes. If his wife was sick, she could also stay in the workers' quarters, making it easier for him to care for her while working. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Lillian's father dropped to his knees, thanking them profusely. He was astonished that someone was thinking so much about the common people. He confessed that he had been struggling to figure out how to care for his family while working, but now, thanks to young Master Reign's arrangements, his worries had been alleviated. The soldier quickly reassured him that there was no need to bow. He promised to send someone to help move Lillian's mother and their belongings to the workers' quarters. He added that if Lillian's father needed any further assistance, he should not hesitate to ask. He emphasized that young Master Reign had personally hired them for this purpose and that they were ready to help as much as possible. Witnessing this act of generosity, the townspeople who had previously doubted young Master Reign now began to change their opinions. They murmured among themselves, realizing that their new lord was indeed a kind and benevolent man. They acknowledged that rejecting such an opportunity would be a mistake. Determined, many among the crowd resolved that, no matter what, they would work on the project. The soldier, seeing their enthusiasm, assured them that there was work available for everyone. He reassured the crowd, telling them that there was no need to jostle and that they should form a queue comfortably, as he would fill out the forms for everyone. Meanwhile, the system informed him that the host was providing the blueprint for a lithium battery, marking his first task. Reign found himself wondering about the usefulness of a battery blueprint. He thought that without an electricity generator, having a battery would be of little benefit. The purpose of a battery was to store energy, but since he couldn't generate any energy in his current situation, he questioned whether the system was mocking him by giving such a seemingly useless reward. Frustrated, he turned his attention to the second task. As he reviewed it, he realized it was significantly more difficult. The task required him to recruit 5 people of high status. He pondered where he would find such individuals. Initially, he had planned to train Leah to achieve such a status. But upon checking her statistics, he discovered that all her attributes were already quite high, none falling below 90. This meant she had already reached her potential, rendering further training pointless. Since he himself did not count among the people he needed, he concluded that he would have to travel to the city, where there were likely many talented individuals who had simply never been given an opportunity to train and showcase their abilities. Just then, a knock on the gate interrupted his thoughts. Leah announced that Lillian had come to meet him. Reign instructed her to let Lillian in. As she entered, Lillian immediately expressed her concerns, explaining that something strange was happening at the construction site. She recounted how everyone had been excited before arriving, yet once there, no one was able to work. Reign, intrigued, asked her to clarify. In response, the narrative shifted to an earlier scene at the construction site. Lillian had confronted her father, questioning why he had taken another break so soon after the last one. She scolded the workers, reminding them that frequent breaks would delay the completion of their work. Her father, however, looked at her solemnly and insisted that he truly wanted to work. He explained that, for some reason, he had felt inexplicably weak since arriving at the site. It wasn't just him, everyone around seemed to be experiencing the same lack of energy. Despite their desire to work, their bodies simply wouldn't cooperate. He even demonstrated how little strength he had left by attempting to strike the ground, but the effort was futile. Frustrated, Lillian tried to reason with them, reminding them that they had been given a rare opportunity to work. She warned that if they continued to be idle, they could not later complain about the nobles never offering them employment. Another worker chimed in, assuring her that they were not making excuses. He admitted that none of them wished to be lazy, but something strange had happened. Ever since they arrived, their strength had completely drained. The other workers agreed, speculating that perhaps their bodies had simply grown unaccustomed to labor over time. They believed that after some rest and a meal, they would regain their strength. However, Lillian refused to accept their reasoning, accusing them of laziness and making excuses. Upon hearing all this, Reign decided to visit the construction site himself. When he arrived, Lillian immediately reported what the workers had said. She urged him not to believe their excuses, warning that if he showed leniency, they would become even lazier, and the dam project would never be completed. Curious, Reign checked the status of Lillian's father and discovered that a curse was affecting him, preventing him from exerting any effort. Realizing that none of the workers were actually sick but rather afflicted by the same curse, Reign reassured Lillian that they were telling the truth. Determined to get to the bottom of the issue, he decided to use his prospecting skill. He had originally intended to reserve this ability for later, once the dam construction had begun in earnest. However, given the circumstances, he realized he had no choice but to use it now. His skill allowed him to analyze stones, formations, minerals, and even land structures in great detail, things that would otherwise remain a mystery. Reign activated his skill and commanded the system to analyze the geological conditions within a 10-kilometer radius. As the system began scanning the area, he pondered what exactly was happening. Soon, the results confirmed that the land contained neither petroleum nor metal, leaving him even more perplexed about the nature of the problem. Reign had initially thought that the place would have a lot of water. As they examined the surroundings, someone remarked that if water was nearby, it should be visible. However, something strange was happening. There was an unusual energy emanating from beneath the ground. The astonishing thing was that the ground wasn't too deep below the surface. Reign stated that they shouldn't overlook this ground, as he believed something significant lay beneath it. Lillian's father responded confidently, saying, "Yes, Master Reign, I can handle the job in just 2 minutes. Even though we are all exhausted, digging this much will be easy for us." As they dug into the ground, a crystal emerged before them. Lillian's father stared at it in astonishment and admitted that he had never seen anything like it before. Leah, equally intrigued, wondered how young Master Reign had been able to detect it. The crystal's magic was so faint that even she hadn't sensed it, yet Reign had done so effortlessly. She started contemplating whether their young master was a magic genius, which would explain how he managed to accomplish such feats so easily. Reign instructed them to carefully extract the crystal and store it in a box, assuring them that it would unveil many secrets. He then shifted the topic and asked the crucial question: if someone is cursed, how do they cure themselves? One of the others explained that, generally, curing a curse required seeking out a priest to lift it. If visiting a priest wasn't an option, a powerful magician could also remove the curse with ease. Reign pondered for a moment and then stated, "You mentioned magicians. Typically, magicians can be found in the Mage Guild. However, since we can't go there at the moment, Lillian, bring your father and come with me to see the priest." Lillian, now deeply concerned, asked, "Young Master Reign, are you certain that my father has been cursed?" Reign confirmed it but reassured her, "Yes, he has been cursed, but don't worry, the ones responsible won't get away with it. I already have an idea of who did this and their possible motive. They made a huge mistake." Upon reaching the church, the priest himself came out to welcome them. He greeted Reign warmly, saying it was a pleasure to meet him. Reign, however, remained cautious. He was determined to have Lillian's father treated, but first, he needed to assess the priest's loyalty. If the priest's loyalty was insufficient, Reign would not proceed with the treatment. He activated his system to scan the priest. The system revealed that the priest's name was Saint Era. Although she appeared to be 24 years old, in reality, she was 257 years old and an elf. Her loyalty to Reign was exceptionally high, measuring at 95 points. Reign found this remarkable but noted that she was not human. Seeing an elf wasn't a new experience for him, but it was still intriguing. Saintess Era introduced herself formally, saying, "Master Reign, I am the saintess of this church. My name is Era. How may I assist you?" Reign pointed to Lillian's father and explained, "This man has been cursed. I brought him here so you could heal him." Reign observed her closely, thinking that while her loyalty was impressive, he needed to see if her abilities matched her dedication. Era responded without hesitation, "Understood, I will heal him." She then began scanning Lillian's father using her ice magic. After a moment, she confirmed Reign's suspicion, saying, "Master Reign, you are absolutely right. This man has indeed been cursed." Reign then asked, "Can you remove it?" With a calm demeanor, Era summoned her light energy and said, "As a priestess, it is my duty to guide those trapped in darkness back to the light." She released a glowing orb of light that moved forward and entered Lillian's father's body. Moments later, the curse visibly lifted from his form and dissipated. Lillian's father was overjoyed. He turned to Reign and exclaimed, "Master Reign, this is incredible. I feel an entirely new surge of energy within me." as if I have been reborn. He clenched his fists in excitement and continued, now, I will prioritize my work. I'll be able to perform my duties with far greater efficiency than before. I felt terrible that I was unable to work properly and was simply collecting my wages, but from now on, that will change. I will work harder than ever. Reign stated that there was no need to hurry. He assured everyone that they would first resolve the matter at hand before returning to work. Addressing Saint Era, he inquired whether she was aware of the crystal they had discovered at the construction site. He also mentioned his belief in the existence of the crystal as the presence of a mysterious crystal that had seemingly cursed all the people. He then asked Era to explain the nature of the stone, its purpose, and its effects. As he spoke, he displayed the stone to Era. In response, Saint Era explained that it was a dark crystal, commonly used as a magical artifact. According to him, someone had infused a significant amount of energy into it, amplifying the power of the curse. However, he noted that the individual behind the curse did not appear to have malicious intentions. Instead of using the crystal's energy to kill, the person had chosen to exhaust people through its effects. He emphasized that the energy stored within the crystal was potent enough to destroy everyone, but the creator had deliberately restrained its power. Reign then asked whether, as Era had mentioned, the crystal was a common magical artifact. He wanted to know if it was easy to create. Saintus replied that for a high-level mage, crafting such a crystal would indeed be simple. He speculated that a powerful mage had created the crystal and buried it at the construction site, which was why the workers had been struggling to complete their tasks. Growing suspicious, Reign questioned whether Saintus knew about their project. Saintus reassured him, stating that their church worked for the welfare of the people and closely monitored any project that could benefit society. He acknowledged that Reign's project had the potential to provide jobs and improve people's livelihoods, which was why he was well aware of it. She then expressed gratitude for the opportunities the project had created, adding that if Reign continued to support the people, the church would support him. Meanwhile, Reign reflected on a past encounter where he had attempted to threaten Malcolm. He recalled that his warnings had been ineffective. As the old man remained arrogant and dismissive, Reign concluded that it was necessary to teach him a lesson. Turning back to Saint Era, Reign pointed out that the entire construction site was cursed. He then asked if Era could use his powers to lift the curse, as work could not resume until the issue was resolved. Era explained that removing a curse from an individual was vastly different from dispelling one that affected an entire location. She admitted that the task would be extremely difficult. Moreover, even if she succeeded, he warned that another curse could easily be placed on the site, as finding cursed crystals was uncommon. She questioned whether Run could continuously find and remove them, highlighting the impracticality of doing so. Reign conceded that Era had a point. Unless the root cause of the problem was addressed, the issues would persist. He decided that he would personally confront the owner to understand the difficulties he was facing. Era then interjected, mentioning that she knew someone capable of resolving the problem effectively. However, she cautioned that the person was quite eccentric and might refuse to help. She advised Reign not to set high expectations. Shortly after, Reign arrived at a mansion. As he approached, he recalled that Saint Era had given him the address of Lady Selena, the former president of the Mage Guild. He had heard that she was highly skilled in magic, and he hoped her assistance would make it easier to manage the current crisis. At that moment, Leah, who was accompanying him, noticed something unusual from the mansion's rooftop. Urgently, she warned Reign to take cover, predicting an imminent explosion. Moments later, a powerful blast erupted from the mansion's second floor. Reign, witnessing the scene, found it perplexing. He could not understand why an explosion would occur at the residence of the former Mage Guild president. Inside the mansion, Selena, seemingly unfazed by the blast, muttered to herself. She lamented yet another failed experiment but vowed not to give up until she succeeded. When Reign and Leah approached her, she quickly dismissed any interest in assisting them. She clarified that she was deeply engrossed in research and had no intention of leaving until her work was complete. Curious, Reign asked whether she was working on a magical staff. Selena scoffed at his assumption, remarking that noble children often had limited understanding of magic. She clarified that she was developing a magical device, not a mere staff. Amused by his ignorance, she teased him about his simplistic thinking. At this point, Leah intervened, asserting that Selena should remember whom she was addressing. She reminded Selena that Reign was the third son of the Grand Duke and the Lord of the territory. She insisted that Selena should speak respectfully and refrain from making a mockery of him. Sensing Leah's magical energy, Selena appeared intrigued. Instead of taking offense, she proposed that Leah assist her in her research. She speculated that with Leah's help, she could complete her project more quickly, after which she would offer her assistance to Reign in return. She reasoned that this arrangement would benefit both parties. Leah, however, stood her ground, refusing the offer. She emphasized that they had come seeking aid, not engaging in negotiations. She warned Selena against disrespecting her master, stating that if she did not adjust her attitude, force would be used to make her comply. Selena, undeterred, responded with a challenge. She remarked that it had been a long time since anyone had dared to speak to her in such a manner and expressed interest in testing their strength. As tensions escalated, Reign stepped in to de-escalate the situation. He reminded them that they were there to seek help, not to provoke conflicts. Noticing the cluttered research materials on Selena's table, Reign observed that she was deeply invested in magical studies rather than administrative duties. Selena, acknowledging his remark, admitted that everything on the table consisted of failed experiments. She explained that her goal was to create a device capable of storing magical energy, allowing mages to use their power more efficiently rather than letting it go to waste. Intrigued, Reign considered the implications of such an invention. He then proposed an offer. He claimed to have knowledge of a method that could help her achieve her goal. However, he made it clear that he did not offer assistance for free. If he helped her, she would have to return the favor by assisting him. Selena, skeptical, responded irritably. She pointed out that her repeated failures had already frustrated her, and she had no patience for empty claims. She dismissed the idea that someone could instantly grasp her concept and create such a device. Reign, however, remained firm. He reiterated his proposition. If he successfully designed a device capable of storing magical energy, would she, in return, aid him in his battle against the Mage Guild? Reign continued. The people were causing numerous problems, and that was why help was needed from someone powerful enough to bring them under control. Reign stated that no one is more capable than President. Reign continued, explaining that if a magical device, one specifically required, had been created, a promise would have been made to put Mage Guild in his place by the following day. Regardless of the Malcolm's current behavior, standing before the president would turn him into nothing more than a helpless creature. He would obey any command given without hesitation, and not only would the curse be removed, but the entire guild would be under control. However, all of this was contingent on receiving the necessary assistance. Selena warned that failure would mean an inability to guarantee safety, as self-restraint would become exceedingly difficult. 5 hours later, the scene shifted to the completed lithium batteries. Examining the blueprint, Reign pondered the situation. He had assumed that possessing the battery was sufficient, but the question of energy input remained unresolved. Constructing a generator seemed necessary, but doing so would require a dam, an endeavor that would consume an immense amount of time. However, Selena had unexpectedly provided a solution to his dilemma. It had not even crossed his mind that mages could be used as an energy source. After thoroughly inspecting the battery, Reign acknowledged that it had been crafted flawlessly, exactly as depicted in the blueprint. Every detail was precise. Selena, however, scolded him, expressing her frustration. She remarked that if this was meant as a joke, it was a poor one. She had previously experimented with numerous expensive materials to store her energy, yet each one had eventually exploded. Now, he was claiming that a few simple stones would be sufficient to contain her power. She was convinced that a larger explosion was imminent. Reign reassured her, stating that there was no need to worry about an explosion. The battery had a capacity of 185 watts per kilogram, and she could channel all of her energy into it to see for herself. To charge it, he explained, nothing extraordinary was required. Simply passing electricity through the designated wire would suffice, and the batteries would automatically store the energy. Selena recalled hearing about the importance of mastering electricity and wondered whether the widespread rumors were true. As she channeled her energy into the wire, she was amazed to see that the batteries were not exploding. Instead, they absorbed her energy efficiently. Stunned, she declared that this was impossible. The fact that the batteries remained intact meant that she had succeeded. Reign, however, pointed out that her energy was insufficient. Despite her efforts, she had not even managed to charge half of the battery. He concluded that she lacked the capacity to fully charge it. Frustrated, Selena retorted that he had the audacity to challenge her abilities. Determined to prove him wrong, she vowed to demonstrate true energy and unleashed her full power. Shortly after, Selena collapsed from exhaustion. She could hardly believe that the device had managed to store all of her energy. She admitted to herself that the device had far exceeded her expectations. Meanwhile, Reign examined the battery, confirming that it was already at 87% capacity. Even after using such a vast amount of energy, the battery was capable of powering an electric car for nearly 3,000 kilometers. He acknowledged Selena's immense power. Releasing so much energy from her body was an extraordinary feat. With the battery nearly fully charged, Reign declared that it was time to show the mages what technological magic could achieve. As he brought the wires together to generate electricity, Selena watched in astonishment and asked if he possessed the ability to use electricity magic. Reign replied that it wasn't just him. If he wished, every person in the city could harness this power. Selena scoffed, dismissing his claim as nonsense. She pointed out that learning magic was an incredibly difficult task, one that only a rare few could accomplish. Suggesting that everyone could use magic was absurd. However, Reign reminded her that he never joked about such matters. If she searched within herself, she would realize that he had even greater ideas for magical devices. If those devices were to be realized, they would perform wonders. He envisioned a world where every individual could wield magic, not just lightning magic, but fire magic, wind magic, and more. He urged Selena to assist him, promising that if she did, they would soon witness a reality where magic and technology coexisted seamlessly. Selena reflected on his words. Indeed, not everyone in this world was capable of using magic. As she considered the implications, the scene shifted. Elsewhere, Malcolm sat at a table, deep in thought. He anticipated that Master Reign would soon come to him, seeking aid for his people. When that moment arrived, Master Reign would finally understand the significance of mages. He would learn not to mistreat a mages ever again. However, Malcolm's confidence faltered when he suddenly found himself face to face with Selena. Selena greeted him with a smirk, remarking that it had been a long time since they last met. Nervously, Malcolm stammered, addressing her formally as President Selena and inquiring about her presence there. Selena, however, questioned why she had left the guild in his care. She remarked that his actions had gone too far. She observed that his courage had grown significantly compared to before, to the point where he dared to stand before the son of Grand Duke. She accused him of forgetting the implications of defying Duke's family. A rebellion against them had only one consequence, and Malcolm knew exactly what that meant. Malcolm felt nervous and spoke less than usual. President Selena, noticing his hesitation, remarked that he should know what she was talking about. Malcolm, trying to affirm his loyalty, insisted that he had always been devoted to the Duke's family and his country, emphasizing that he could never commit any wrongdoing. Selena, unimpressed, echoed his words with a tone of skepticism, as if testing his conviction, demanded that Malcolm confess any misdeeds immediately. She accused Malcolm of using a curse at the construction site to sabotage Master Reign's workers. Knowing how much courage he has despised such actions, she found it audacious that Malcolm dared to argue his case. Trembling and tearful, Malcolm pleaded with Selena to let him explain. He revealed that young Master Reign had not given him any work nor issued any notice, which had enraged him. Fueled by resentment, he gathered his team and convinced them that the Lord looked down on them. His frustration grew, and in his anger, he crafted a powerful crystal imbued with a teleportation magic, burying it underground at the site so that no one would detect its presence. Malcolm elaborated that the commoners under his charge tired quickly, leading the young master to perceive them as lazy and unfit for work. He had believed that if Master Reign had acknowledged his grievances, apologized, and collaborated with their faction, things would have improved for everyone. He insisted that his actions stemmed from a desire to secure work for the mages rather than allowing it to fall into the hands of the commoners. Selena, exasperated, scolded him for his foolishness, reminding him of how often she had warned him not to meddle in others' affairs. She pointed out that he had been used, manipulated to appear as a rebel. She asked if he even realized how much trouble he had brought upon himself. Still in shock, Malcolm questioned who had used him, desperation lacing his voice. Selena, however, dismissed the discussion, stating that they would address it later. She instructed Malcolm to summon his mages and bring them back before they caused further issues. Malcolm promptly agreed, assuring her that he would gather everyone immediately. Selena then turned to Reign, informing him that all his troubles had been resolved. She assured him that, henceforth, the Mage Guild would not cause any more problems. She added that, as he had seen for himself, their people harbored no malicious intent. Rather, they had been manipulated by City Lord Eldrick. Reign, relieved, expressed his gratitude to Selena for her assistance. She then offered to eliminate Eldrick in a way that would leave no trace, suggesting he would simply vanish. However, Reign quickly dismissed the idea, stating that Eldrick posed no real threat. Instead, he intended to use Eldrick to uncover the true masterminds behind the schemes. He believed that the minor players would inevitably lead them to more significant figures. As he prepared to leave, Reign mentioned that he had much work to do. Selena, smiling, stopped him for a moment, reminding him that they were about to embark on a new project. She noted that he had many endeavors in motion and urged him to keep her informed. She expressed her enthusiasm for helping, confident that working together would be mutually beneficial. Reign reassured her, stating that he could never forget her assistance. He suggested that she focus first on rallying everyone and ensuring they were energized before they moved on to future plans. Selena agreed, stating that she would personally handle it. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Elric was in distress. He lamented that their plans were being foiled, blaming a troublesome child for their setbacks. He reported that even Malcolm had fallen under the child's influence and anxiously asked what their next course of action should be. A robed figure, remaining composed, advised against hasty decisions. He pointed out that the only real threat in Essling City's Mage Guild was Selena. If she were removed, the entire guild would crumble, leaving them unchallenged. However, he redirected the conversation, wanting to know the status of the dam project. the city lord responded that the project was progressing well and that, if completed as planned, Esling City would soon prosper. He noted that this prosperity would bring wealth to all, making it nearly impossible for their plans to succeed. He stressed that only in a state of ruin could their schemes be realized. He assured the robed man that he had devised a foolproof plan to entrap the master. He explained that all the city's nobles were under his influence, and he was pressuring them to inflate grain prices drastically. His strategy was to make food so expensive that commoners would be unable to afford it, ensuring that desperation and poverty played into their hands. The robed man questioned whether nobles would truly support such a dangerous plan. The city lord confidently replied that the young master had already made it difficult for these people to earn money. Previously, they had made a small profit from the casino, but with its closure, they were now struggling. In this desperate situation, he was offering them an alternative path, one that served their own interests while furthering his own agenda. He had come to earn, so he questioned why people would reject his offer. He could accept that some might cheat him, but he believed that no one would cheat their own profits and money. The nobles of Elsing City, he thought, were like greedy wolves, incapable of changing their nature unless driven by their desires. As they tossed their coins, they remarked that soon the price of grain would rise significantly, and the young master would be forced to build a dam nearby. They scoffed, saying that no money would be left, no profit would be made anywhere, and that both the dam and the young master's dreams would remain unfulfilled. Meanwhile, a merchant roughly shoved Lillian aside, sneering as he spoke. He taunted that poor people like her had no right to raise their eyebrows and step into such places. If she had no money, she had no place to complain. If you want grain from here, go and get the money, he said coldly. Lillian retorted, her voice firm, you are a merchant, yet you are being completely unfair. How can you raise the price of grain so drastically? Just yesterday, we could buy 2 bags of grain for 1 gold coin, but today, within just a day, the price has doubled. Now, we have to pay 2 gold coins for a single bag. This is outrageous. The merchant smirked, unfair, you say, and what can you do about it? This grain belongs to me. I alone decide its price. No one tells me how much to sell my goods for. If you can afford it, buy it. If not, get out. Lillian clenched her fists, frustration welling inside her. She had promised Ren that she would buy grain at a reasonable price, yet now that she had come to make the purchase, the prices had skyrocketed. If things continued this way, her business would fail. You are all greedy wolves, she accused. You know that Brother Reign is doing good work, and because of his efforts, your corrupt business practices will soon crumble. So now, you resort to these petty tricks. The merchant laughed derisively. We are simply good businessmen. We have not cheated you. We are selling our product at the price we set. Here, I am the master, and Reign can't do anything to us. We are not breaking any laws. Then, with a cruel grin, he kicked Lillian aside. Now, get out before I lose my patience. Watching the scene unfold, commoners felt deep unease. The exorbitant price of grain made survival impossible for them. They could endure many hardships, but they could not live without food. At the church, Saint Era expressed her frustration. Humans are becoming worse by the day. How can they cross such lines? In just 3 days, they have raised the prices so much. A bag of grain that used to cost 50 silver now costs 3 gold coins. Alferia, this supply is far too little to sustain everyone through the winter. Handing over some money, she instructed, take this as well. We cannot let our people die, no matter what happens. And when you leave, pay the guards an amount. Alferia hesitated, but this is too much money. Even after bribing the guards, we won't have much left. Saint Era insisted, do as I say. As Alferia reached to put the money in her bag, the coins suddenly vanished from her hands. Turning quickly, they saw that Leah and Reign had arrived. Reign addressed Saint Era directly, why deal with the guards when you can deal with me instead? I promise to offer you a far more interesting arrangement. Saint Era regarded him carefully. Master Reign, may I ask what you wish to discuss? Reign smiled. No need to worry, what I have to say will ease your concerns considerably. She frowned. Young master, you do realize that this is the capital, and the people here are human. How can there be elves within a human city? Returning the money to Alferia, Reign responded, you don't need to act in front of me. I know very well that you are an elf, and I have no problem with you or your people. In fact, I have no issue with the entire elf community. If we work together, we can all live in harmony. Saint Era studied him before saying, if you truly mean that, then it is good news for us. Reign nodded. What I wish to discuss is the food supply center. Saint Era sighed. Master Ren, I know this may sound harsh, but food supply is beyond your control. Even if you wish to, you cannot dominate it. Ren leaned forward. Explain. Saint Era elaborated. The food control of Esling City is governed by 4 noble families. These families have been established here for over a century, and their influence is immense. They dictate the price of grain, increasing or decreasing it at will. During the last banquet, you demonstrated how dangerous you could be by destroying the Edwin family. That scared them. But it won't stop them. They will not hesitate to act against you. Reign asked, "You know everything about this city, don't you?" Saint Era nodded. "I have lived here for 120 years. That means I have seen 3 generations of your family past. Yes, I know this city very well. If you had not eliminated the Edwin family, you might have had a chance to negotiate. But now, knowing how formidable you are, they will refuse any negotiations." The war last year, coupled with the ensuing disaster, led to severe shortages of food and water. Had the grain prices remained stable, perhaps my people could have survived the winter, but with these rising costs, many will perish from hunger. Watching my people die like this is unbearable. Reign reassured her, "You know my strength. I never abandon those who support me. You helped me before and have now provided me with vital information. Because of that, I promise you, within half a month, the grain market will stabilize. Not only that, but prices will plummet to levels never seen before." Meanwhile, at the mansion of the Klein family, Lord Augustus addressed his peers. "Thanks to the city lord's support, we have achieved incredible success. Our 4 noble families have reaped immense profits." The others praised him. "Lord Augustus, this was your doing. You deserve the most credit." Augustus raised a toast. "Let us drink to our growing business." As they celebrated, a servant entered with an urgent message. "Sir, young Master Reign has sent an invitation. He requests your presence at a banquet along with the other lords." One of the noble heads frowned. "A banquet with young Master Reign? Is he targeting us after the Edwin family?" Another added, "We all know how powerful the Edwins were, yet he crushed them. What if he turns on us next?" Augustus smirked. "You worry needlessly. I have spoken with the city lord. We can raise the prices as much as we want. There will be no repercussions. The Duke's son can only challenge us if we break the law, and we are doing everything legally. Just ensure that none of our people offend young Master Reign. As long as we do not repeat Edwin's mistake, we have nothing to fear." The merchants firmly held the authority to increase prices, and they knew that even the emperor himself could not interfere in such matters. They scoffed at the idea of the duke's youngest son posing any threat to them. The crowd applauded, affirming their leader's wisdom, agreeing that unity among them was essential. If they stood together, they believed, no obstacle could hinder them. One of the merchants pointed out that they had a golden opportunity to amass wealth. He declared that the price of their grain was set at 3 gold coins, and if young Master Reign attempted to disrupt their plans, they would simply reduce 5 coppers on 1 bag to maintain their profit margins. He reminded them that they had no reason to fear the young noble, emphasizing that he held no real power over them. The others assured Lord Augustus that they would remain steadfast by his side. They acknowledged the benefits of unity, warning that division would only lead to losses. The scene shifted to Reign's residence. Inside, he lay comfortably as Leah massaged him. Half asleep, he was informed that young Master Reign and the other 3 lords had arrived. Without hesitation, Reign instructed that they be sent inside and that the kitchen prepare food. He had planned a banquet for their meeting. As the lords entered and greeted him, Reign observed their changed attire. He noted to himself that they had deliberately dressed in rags to appear impoverished before him. He found their act amusing, knowing full well that such deception would not work on him. Addressing them, he pointed out that, as the heads of the 4 families controlling Essling City's food supply, they had substantial wealth. He questioned why they were dressed as commoners though they were anything but nobles. Lord Augustus responded respectfully, mentioning that he had recently heard about the budget plan and the benefits it brought to the people. He expressed interest in contributing, asking if they, as nobles, could participate in the initiative. Another lord quickly chimed in, claiming that they had already begun selling their grain at significantly lower prices in order to support the city's inhabitants. Leah, witnessing their performance, seethed inwardly. She knew they were deceitful. These merchants had unjustly raised the price of grain, yet here they stood, pretending to be benevolent by falsely claiming to have lowered it. She realized that their strategy was to prevent young Master Reign from questioning them about the price hike. She scoffed at their naivety. Did they truly think their young master was a fool? Reign, maintaining his composure, sarcastically thanked them for their generous support. He then smoothly shifted the conversation, revealing that he had summoned them to discuss the price of grains. Lord Augustus, feigning concern, spoke up. He acknowledged Reign's financial difficulties but insisted that they, too, were struggling. He lamented that they were already selling grain at a loss, claiming that they were sacrificing their own meals to ensure commoners could eat. Another lord added to the dramatic act, stating that he even let his children go hungry so that the less fortunate could be fed. He sighed, insisting that they could do no more than they already had. Reign chuckled and reassured them that they had misunderstood his intentions. Rather than reducing prices, he proposed the opposite, increasing them back to double their original rates. He suggested that instead of the current price of 1 gold coin per unit of grain, they should raise it to 4 gold coins. This way, they would generate more profit and, in turn, support his cause while ensuring their own children did not go hungry. Intrigued, Augustus questioned Reign to confirm whether he was truly suggesting a price increase. Reign affirmed his statement, explaining that as a noble himself, he was naturally inclined to support other nobles. If they were earning wealth, he, too, wanted a share of the profits. He proposed a simple deal, raising the grain prices to 4 gold coins, while ensuring he received a 30% commission from the earnings. As long as they paid him his due share, they could continue making as much money as they pleased. If they found the proposal acceptable, they could move forward with negotiations. Augustus hesitated, visibly nervous. He struggled to believe his own ears and asked Reign to clarify. Had he truly suggested increasing grain prices to 4 gold coins and demanded a 30% cut of their profits? Reign confirmed without hesitation. He reiterated that, in addition to raising prices, he would personally take a portion of their business revenue. Lord Augustus, taken aback, realized that his initial impression of Reign had been entirely mistaken. He had assumed that young Master Reign was a selfless leader who prioritized the welfare of the people. However, it dawned on him that Reign was just as cunning and self-serving as the merchants themselves. Augustus smirked, acknowledging that he had misjudged the young noble's character. He now saw him as a fellow opportunist, just like them. Reflecting on past events, Augustus regretted not approaching Reign sooner. Had he known that the young noble shared their mindset, they could have struck a deal much earlier and reaped even greater profits. He now understood why the city lord had spoken ill of Reign. He had simply been provoked by jealousy. Previously, the merchants had been cautious with price increases, fearing public outrage and possible complaints to the emperor. However, now that they had the duke's son on their side, they felt emboldened. With Reign's support, they could escalate prices without fear of repercussions. Their profits would soar while the commoners suffered the consequences. Augustus expressed his gratitude to Reign, acknowledging his understanding of their struggles. He noted that not everyone took the time to empathize with others and asked when the new prices would be officially announced. He explained that a formal declaration would make it easier for them to manage their affairs. Reign responded that the document was ready but had yet to be finalized. He mentioned that he would send it to his father for approval, and once it was stamped, everything would be set in motion. He assured them that he would expedite the process as much as possible. Additionally, he reminded them that he was making great efforts on their behalf and expected them to acknowledge this in the future. He even admitted that he had considered giving the Edwin family a chance, but their disrespect had left him no choice but to destroy them. He clarified that he had no personal grudge and had merely wanted a share in the casino. The nobles nodded in agreement, and one of them remarked that Reign was a wise leader. They acknowledged that aligning with those in power was always beneficial and expressed their gratitude, noting that thanks to him, their children would have food and better clothing. Meanwhile, in another household, a nobleman questioned Augustus about whether their young master was as noble as he appeared. He suggested that they should be cautious and examine the day's events more closely. Another noble voiced his concerns, finding it strange that Reign had raised the prices instead of lowering them. He speculated that it might be a test. Augustus, frustrated, scoffed and threw his glass. He rebuked them, stating that Reign had made it clear that his primary concern was profit rather than the well-being of the commoners. He pointed out that they were the only ones aware of this knowledge, which presented them with a great opportunity to amass wealth. He continued by explaining that the city lord had deceived them and had deliberately kept them away from Reign to prevent them from joining the bank. They would never have realized that he shared their mindset, that money was the only thing that mattered. He emphasized the importance of keeping this knowledge secret, as any leaks could ruin their plans. By controlling the grain supply, they could dictate prices to their advantage, realizing the potential for immense profit. The other nobles swore their allegiance to Augustus, declaring him their leader and agreeing to follow his command. Augustus, pleased with their loyalty, explained that they had already profited from selling grain at inflated prices and would now purchase all available stock from smaller merchants. Once they controlled the supply, they would have the power to set the prices as they saw fit. He advised them not to deplete their grain reserves, assuring them that their wealth would soon multiply beyond imagination. Meanwhile, at Reign's residence, furious Saint Era confronted Reign, accusing him of deceit. She reminded Reign of his promise to lower grain prices and expressed her disappointment, stating that nobles always looked out for each other. She regretted trusting him, as she feared countless people would suffer due to the price increase. Lillian intervened, urging Saint Era to remain calm and listen to Reign before jumping to conclusions. She insisted that Run had promised to lower the prices and suggested that his actions might be part of a larger plan. Saint Era, skeptical, scoffed at her words. She accused Reign of allying with the merchants and found it impossible to believe that he would reduce prices. Lillian, however, insisted that she had complete faith in Reign and believed that he had an extraordinary plan beyond their comprehension. Saint Era, reflecting on her people's suffering, took a deep breath and composed himself. She then asked Reign directly if he truly intended to increase the price of grain, and if so, then why. Reign reassured him, acknowledging his concerns and explaining that the situation was only temporary. He confirmed that prices would rise for a short period but assured Saint Era that within 15 days, the entire market would collapse. Saint Era, still skeptical, expressed her doubts. She pointed out that, in her 200 years of life, she had witnessed countless market fluctuations and had never seen a price hike result in a sudden crash. She warned Reign that the people he was dealing with were far more ruthless than he realized and that, historically, once prices increased, they continued to rise. As tensions mounted, only time would reveal whether Reign's strategy would bring relief or further despair. Reign demanded an answer from Saintis, his tone sharp and authoritative. He posed a hypothetical scenario, asking if he had used force to threaten the people, how much the price of grain would have decreased. He reasoned that even if the price had dropped slightly, no one would have truly benefited. Saint Era listened intently, then responded with concern. She pointed out that due to Reign's actions, the price of grain had skyrocketed from 2 gold coins to 9. She speculated about the hardships faced by a typical family of 4, struggling to earn a living. With prices so high, survival had become nearly impossible. Many families, especially those with young children unable to work, faced starvation. Saint Era realized that the clever maneuver Reign had played had dire consequences for both his own people and the commoners. She admitted with remorse that in the name of strategy, he had made a grave mistake that could cost many lives. Reign, visibly angered by Saint's words, refuted his claims. He stated that even if the price were reduced to half its current value, the common people still would not be able to afford it. He argued that whether the price was 1 or 4 gold coins, people would perish regardless. He then confronted Saintis, challenging him on his logic. If raising the prices meant freeing the people, then was he not merely accelerating their demise? Saintis struggled to grasp Reign's reasoning. She expressed her confusion, noting that Reign's words painted him as a noble leader, yet his actions resembled those of a ruthless ruler. She accused Reign of behaving like a monarch indifferent to human suffering. Reign, without hesitation, affirmed that if cruelty was what Saintis saw in him, then perhaps she was not entirely wrong. He explained that while some in the city would lose everything, their homes, families, and livelihoods, the ones truly suffering were not the commoners but the noble families who had manipulated the grain prices. He assured Saintis that his actions had a purpose, and in time, that purpose would become clear. A week later, the scene shifted to Selena's house, where Reign was explaining the workings of a lithium battery. He described the components and how they enabled the flow of electricity from one point to another, ceasing only when the circuit was broken. Selena, fascinated, expressed her admiration, calling Reign a genius for simplifying such a complex concept. Their lesson was interrupted when Leah entered the room, informing Reign that Saint Era had come to see him again. Reign sighed, wondering what the reason for her visit could be this time. Selena speculated that it was likely due to the worsening hunger crisis in the city. The price of grain had reached an astronomical level, making it unaffordable even for the nobles. Moments later, Saint Era arrived, her voice laced with frustration. She reminded Reign of his promise to lower the grain prices, yet no change had been seen. She accused him of being detached from the struggles of the common people, arguing that as the Duke's son, he could not possibly understand the hardships they faced. Reign asked how long the grain prices had remained high. Upon hearing that it had been 7 days, he declared that the time had come to punish the merchants responsible for the crisis. Era, exasperated, demanded to know whether Reign intended to take action or merely deliver grand speeches. She insisted that if he did not explain his plan, it would become impossible for her to justify their suffering to her people. The elf clan's patience was wearing thin, and their support for Reign was dwindling. Reign admitted that he had not revealed his plans earlier because he had not fully trusted Saint Era. He had suspected that she might be aligned with the nobles. However, he now believed in her sincerity and decided it was time to unveil his strategy. He pointed out that while everyone knew grain prices had soared, few had noticed that the number of merchants selling grain had drastically declined. Apart from the 4 noble families, no one else was selling grain. The smaller merchants had been forced to sell their stock back to the nobles. Era questioned the significance of this observation. Reign explained that in any market, scarcity drove supply. Since food vendors had disappeared, prices had surged. However, when outside merchants learned of the shortage, they would flock to the city, eager to capitalize on the high prices. Saint Era began to understand Reign's strategy. Reign elaborated further. Once outside merchants arrived, they would undercut each other to secure sales, driving prices down. To accelerate this process, he had deliberately fixed the grain price at 4 gold coins, ensuring that the news spread quickly to nearby regions. Expecting substantial profits, merchants would rush in with their goods, but they would soon realize that the market was not as lucrative as they had hoped. He then assigned Era a crucial task, distributing documents throughout the city announcing her dissatisfaction with Reign's actions. The message would state that, as a result, the church would begin selling its stored grain at significantly lower prices. This would panic the incoming merchants, forcing them to lower their prices even further. Era hesitated, questioning why Reign entrusted such an important task to her when he could carry it out himself. Reign responded that he lacked surplus grain, whereas the church had reserves. Saintis, however, protested, arguing that she had saved that grain to sustain his people through the harsh winter. She accused Reign of pushing the people to the brink and now seeking to take their last remaining hope for survival. Selena chuckled at Saintis' hesitation, calling her foolish. She pointed out that if she refused, Reign would simply find another way, and when prices eventually fell, Saintis would be the one to suffer losses. Era insisted that the church had no interest in profit, only in feeding the people. Reign reassured her that once the merchants flooded the city, the cost of grain would drop so dramatically that the church would be able to replenish its stocks at half the current price. With Era reluctantly agreeing to the plan, Reign's strategy was set in motion. The city braced itself for the coming shift, unaware of the economic storm Reign had meticulously orchestrated. Reign said, "Do you think I wouldn't have considered these things? All the merchants coming here now are not just driven mad by greed. They believe they will earn so much money selling goods that they won't have to work for the rest of their lives. But when they realize their expectations aren't met, and the goods are not selling as cheaply as they assumed, they will struggle to sell quickly and leave. Some will even try to return with their goods, but with the city sealed off, they won't be able to. They all know very well that delays mean losses, and no merchant willingly takes a loss upon themselves." The scene transitions to Augustus's house. The head of another family anxiously informs Lord Augustus, "A big problem has arisen. Are you aware of what our church is doing?" Seeing the suffering of the people in Essling City, they are deeply moved. To help, they have decided to sell their food reserves at half price, offering them here for just 1 gold coin. "Our price has reached 10 gold, yet the church is selling at such a low rate." Naturally, a massive crowd has gathered. Another noble interjects, "Yes, Lord Augustus, what should we do?" The lords of the other families look nervous. Augustus remains composed. "I don't understand why you're panicking. How much food do you think the church has? No matter their efforts, they won't have enough to feed the entire city. I can guarantee that within a few days, their grain will be depleted, and then they will be powerless. So, instead of worrying, send our people to the church to buy as much grain as possible. If we acquire all their stock, we will have no problems." The scene shifts to the church, where a huge crowd has gathered, clamoring for bags of grain, while common people are prepared to buy 5 bags each. Tension builds. Era calls out, "Please don't push. We have enough grain for everyone." We informed the Pope of the city's dire situation, and he has sent 100,000 bags from the capital. This amount will be sufficient for everyone, so there's no need to panic. The crowd erupts with enthusiasm. The Pope is truly kind. He genuinely cares for us. However, urgency spreads among them. "We must hurry to buy the grain before it runs out. It's being sold at such a cheap rate. We may never get this opportunity again." Era raises her voice. "No, first, form a proper line. Pushing and shoving will not help anyone." At that moment, soldiers arrive. One steps forward and commands, "Everyone, maintain order. This is a church, not your home." Approaching the center, another soldier announces, "The Pope has sent food supplies for us. The first batch has arrived today, and more will continue to come regularly. The people of this city will not suffer any longer." Era smiles, but inwardly worries. "Young Master Reign, what have you done? Acting in front of everyone like this makes me nervous. Because of your plan, I invoke the Pope's name. If he finds out, he'll surely be furious. How will I handle things then?" Meanwhile, among the merchants, murmurs of distress grow. "This isn't what we expected. We thought we'd make enormous profits, but the church has ruined everything." One merchant laments, "I bought grain for 60 silver coins per bag, spent another 10 on transport, and wasted valuable time bringing it here. Now, I can only sell it for 95 silver coins. At this rate, I'll make a 10 silver coin profit per bag. We must sell quickly and leave before the church offers even lower prices and we suffer massive losses." He shouts, "Forget 1 gold coin. I'll sell for 95 silver coins per bag. Come and buy now. You won't get a better deal." Immediately, people rush to him, demanding bags of grain. The other merchants look on in dismay. "We've been trapped. We came here expecting huge profits, but because of a few reckless individuals, prices are crashing. If we don't sell fast, they'll drop even further, and we'll suffer heavy losses." One merchant, seeing the chaos, decides, "I'll sell at 90 silver coins." Another agrees, "I'll go as low as 85. From his mansion, Reign watches the unfolding scene. Leah exclaims, "Master Reign, you're a genius. Everything is happening exactly as you predicted. In just 10 minutes, prices have plummeted. Look, they're now willing to sell at 70 silver coins per bag." Reign responded, explaining that this was simply human nature. He pointed out that at that moment, every merchant's primary concern was avoiding losses. When the church announced that they possessed a surplus of grains and would be able to distribute them for the next few months, the merchants panicked. Driven by greed, they had abandoned their usual trades. hoping for massive profits in one swift move. However, upon realizing their hopes had been crushed, they now sought to exit the market at any cost. Leah observed that if the trend continued, prices would soon stabilize, making their upcoming tasks significantly easier. She praised Reign's strategic brilliance. Reign, however, cautioned her against underestimating the merchants. He explained that as long as they continued selling their grains, prices would remain low. However, he anticipated that once Augustus and his allies entered the market, prices would plummet to unprecedented levels. This, he noted, would mark the most significant price drop in the city's history, ultimately benefiting consumers. Reign elaborated that many merchants were from outside the region, making it difficult for them to sustain their businesses. However, Augustus and his allies had long been established in the area, meaning they would not be as quick to sell off their stock at low prices. Since they had purchased grains at 2 gold coins, they would be unwilling to sell them cheaply. Furthermore, the unity among the 4 noble families was formidable. While some believed their alliance could be fractured, Reign disagreed. He noted that their unity had previously brought them immense profits, but now, as losses loomed, divisions might arise. He stated that when human profit was at stake, alliances often crumbled. Having played his part, he left it to fate to determine the merchant's future. He concluded that the price drop had ensured everyone could now afford to eat to their satisfaction. He then suggested moving towards the centers to discuss other matters. Meanwhile, Augustus was approached by a noble who expressed concern over the situation. He reported that the merchants had drastically reduced prices, with grains now selling for just 75 silver coins. He feared that prices might drop further and sought guidance on what to do. Another noble dismissed his worries, arguing that since they had retained most of their stock, the smaller merchants' supplies would eventually deplete. He questioned the logic behind merchants reducing prices to such an extent, believing that they would not willingly incur such losses. A noble with yellow hair addressed Lord Augustus, insisting that he was speaking the truth. He asked what benefit he would gain from lying about the situation. Augustus analyzed the crisis. Augustus realized that official prices had been raised, which had triggered widespread panic. The influx of merchants further contributed to the price drop. He concluded that this entire scenario was orchestrated by young Master Reign. He was shocked by Reign's ruthlessness and speculated that his ultimate goal might be to dismantle the noble families. Given Reign's cunning strategy, Augustus doubted that many noble families would survive the fallout. Ronald, puzzled by Augustus's reaction, asked what he had understood that others had not. Augustus explained that initially, they had reduced the price to 2 gold coins while simultaneously increasing the official price. Because of this, no one had paid much attention. However, Reign had leveraged the church's influence to manipulate the market. By causing a dramatic price drop, he had thrown the merchants into a state of panic. Fearing massive losses, they had begun selling their grains hastily, further driving prices downward. The impact was immense. Some merchants had already sold their grain at 90 silver coins, while others had to settle for 75 silver coins. Ronald expressed disbelief at Reign's ruthless tactics. He had not expected such a calculated approach from young Master Reign. Augustus reassured everyone, stating that despite the losses they had incurred, he had an excellent plan to turn things around. Young Master Reign thinks that he was the only one capable of planning and strategizing. He asserted that he was equally skilled and that they would ensure young Master Reign's plan would fail. Ronald and the others eagerly demanded to know the next steps, expressing their willingness to follow Augustus's lead. Augustus revealed that the rumor about food being stored near the church was false. There was no grain there, nor was it with the outside merchants. Within a few months, those merchants would sell everything and leave. He doubted they would ever return. He further explained that once these merchants departed, they would sell their remaining stock at exorbitant prices. However, their own success depended on unity. If even one of them lost patience and started selling grain prematurely, all of them would suffer devastating losses. He emphasized that under no circumstances should anyone sell their grain until the time was right. Hearing this, the group became visibly nervous. Ronald, understanding the gravity of the situation, agreed with Augustus. He quickly declared that he would return home and instruct everyone to halt the sale of grain until Augustus gave the signal. As Ronald left, he contemplated the situation. He felt there was no point in staying and resolved to sell her grains before anyone else could. If he hesitated, he believed he would suffer immense losses. Meanwhile, the other noble family heads regarded Ronald with suspicion. They were convinced he was deceitful and planned to secretly sell his stock first, which explained his hasty departure. They left one by one, each harboring their own schemes. Back with Augustus, his butler hesitantly asked if he should instruct their people to withhold their grain as well. Annoyed, Augustus kicked a bottle and rebuked the butler, calling him an idiot. He pointed out that their competitors, Ronald and the others, were all untrustworthy. They had left in such a hurry precisely because they intended to sell their grain first. If Augustus held back, he would be the only one at a disadvantage. Instead, he ordered all their shopkeepers to sell their grain at the lowest possible price, aiming to deplete their stock quickly. If competition escalated, their losses would be catastrophic. The butler nodded and left to relay Augustus's orders. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Saintus stood beside Reign. Reign reassured him, saying he had promised to stabilize grain prices and provide an ample supply. He now believed he had fulfilled that promise, as the current stock would sustain Saintus's people through the winter. Saintus was astonished, questioning how such an abundance of grain had suddenly appeared. Reign explained that due to the initial high prices, they had made a substantial profit, while others had hesitated to lower their rates. They had capitalized on the market shifts, reinvesting their gains to double their stock. This strategy had given them an overwhelming advantage. Lillian, listening to the conversation, excitedly informed Reign that food prices had dropped significantly. Previously, a single gold coin could buy only one grain sack, but now it could purchase 3. She marveled at how drastically the market had shifted. Reign reminded Saintus that he had predicted this outcome. By exercising patience and waiting for the right moment, the prices had plummeted beyond their expectations. Now, they had an opportunity to buy even more grain at minimal cost. With the food crisis resolved, Reign turned the conversation to other matters. Saint Era questioned what their next course of action would be, particularly concerning the elves. Reign stated that they needed to discuss every aspect of their future relations. Saintus, taken aback, asked for clarification. Reign explained that his offer extended beyond just grain. He proposed that they would support the elves in all aspects of their lives, including food, clothing, and housing. In return, the elves would have to commit to working for them. Saintus hesitated, acknowledging that she lacked the authority to make such a monumental decision on behalf of his people. She informed Reign that she would need to discuss it with their queen, who would ultimately decide their course of action. Reign accepted this, assuring Saintus that he had no objections. He simply requested that Saintus convey the extent of their aid to the queen so he would be more inclined to negotiate. Saintus promised to send a letter to the queen immediately, hoping to arrange a meeting with her soon. As Reign reflected on the situation, he recognized the extent of their success. The nobles who had schemed against him had suffered severe losses, leaving them powerless to oppose him. The Mage Guild had fallen under his control, and soon, the Church and the Saintses would follow. Gaining their influence would mean having command over both the elves and the city's people. However, one major obstacle remained: Eldrick. He still controlled the military and taxation. Reign was confident that Eldrick wouldn't raise taxes, as the nobles would retaliate fiercely. However, Eldrick could use the military to stage a rebellion, posing a significant threat. Reign resolved that he had to seize control of the army by any means necessary. As he pondered his next move, Leah approached and began massaging his shoulders. She urged him to relax, assuring him that he was already doing an excellent job and need not stress over every detail. Reign exhaled deeply, allowing himself a moment of respite. Elsewhere in the city, a merchant, visibly distressed, lamented his situation. He recounted how he had worked diligently, earning a considerable profit, only to be ambushed and robbed by soldiers on his way home. He questioned the purpose of doing business in a city where all his earnings were stolen. Disillusioned, he admitted that he had once thought Eldrick was an honorable leader, but now he wasn't so sure. As he brooded over his misfortune, Reign approached him, his tone friendly. He asked the merchant what was troubling him. Noting his evident frustration, the merchant, irritated, demanded to know who Reign was. With a sly smile, Reign introduced himself as someone who saw potential in collaboration. He then posed a simple question: would the merchant be interested in doing business with him? After some time, Reign arrived at the city gate with that man. A soldier standing at the gate stopped them. "Wait a second. Where are you from, and what do you have in your carriage?" Lillian responded politely, "Soldier, I am a citizen of this city. My carriage contains regular goods that I plan to sell to the people of Essling. I was hoping to make some profit." The soldier nodded. "So you're a merchant? Well, you'll have to wait. We need to search your belongings before you can proceed." As the soldiers moved forward, one of them carelessly broke a container. Lillian protested, "Sir, what are you doing? If you break my jars, how will I transport them? This damage could cause major problems for me in the future. My goods might even scatter along the way." After completing their search, one soldier called out, "Boss, there's nothing suspicious here. What should we do now?" Their leader smirked. "What else? They'll have to pay the city gate toll before leaving. Pay up now and get out of here." Lillian glared at them. "You people are unbelievable. First, you break my jar, and now you demand money on top of that." The soldier sneered, "Tax is tax. If you can't pay, then leave." Before Lillian could argue further, Reign stepped in. "Lillian, calm down. Just pay whatever they're asking for. We have more important things to do." Reluctantly, Lillian handed over the money. One of the soldiers chuckled. "Master Reign has increased the tax a lot, hasn't he? You're still paying me far too little. To leave, you'll need to pay in silver coins." Irritated, Lillian snapped, "All the goods I'm transporting are only worth 5 silver coins. and you're demanding 3 silver coins from me? If I pay double, how am I supposed to make a profit? This is ridiculous." The soldier scowled. "Pay up or get lost. I'm here to collect taxes, not listen to your complaints." Lillian fumed inwardly. These people are nothing but scoundrels, misusing Master Reign's name. "I know Brother Reign hasn't raised any taxes. These soldiers are pocketing the money for themselves. Fine, do whatever you want now, but soon, you'll face consequences you never expected." After paying, they were finally allowed to proceed. Reign turned to a nearby merchant and remarked, "Master Reign is utterly useless. Why is he collecting so much tax from his own people? I've never seen a noble more corrupt." The merchant shot him a sharp look. "Sir, be careful with your words. I won't tolerate insults against our noble. I don't care what you think about others, but Master Reign has done more for Essling City than anyone before him." Reign scoffed. "You're suffering losses because of him, yet you still support him? I don't understand. If taxes have increased, it must be on his orders. It's not like the soldiers are collecting money on their own. Why blame them instead of Reign?" The merchant sighed. "You must be new here. If you knew anything about this city, you'd never speak like that. Master Reign is the first noble who genuinely cares about his people. He even lowered grain prices to prevent starvation. Without his intervention, many would have died from hunger. As a merchant, I've lost profits, but I don't mind because I know the city is changing for the better. If I ever meet Master Reign, I'll tell him to continue his good work. Everyone here would give their lives for him." Reign frowned. "But I've heard a different story. When he entered the city, a noble family was wiped out. People say he's nothing but a madman, seizing land as he pleases." The merchant laughed bitterly. "Ah, you must be talking about the Edwin family. They ran the city's casinos, but let's be honest, they deserve their downfall. If they were still in power, this city would be a nightmare." Reign raised an eyebrow. "You seem quite informed about them." The merchant nodded. "Of course, every merchant in this city knows the truth about the Edwins. Do you think they got rich just by running a casino? No, their real wealth came from human trafficking." Reign's expression darkened. "Human trafficking?" He thought to himself. "I already lack workers, and if this operation has been shut down, the labor shortage will be even worse. But I did the right thing. Destroying that family was necessary. Still, my main concern should be the military. If they're abusing their power, it could lead to chaos, and if other nations learn that our military isn't loyal, we could be in real danger." As they talked, a commotion outside caught their attention. Lillian's voice rang out. "We already paid the tax. Why are you charging us again? Tax is only collected once when leaving the city." A soldier sneered. "What you paid earlier was the city tax. Now, you must pay the border tax." Lillian glared. "That's nonsense. In the past, we were only charged once, and the tax was never this high. You robbed us already, and now you want more?" The soldier chuckled. "Little girl, pay up or turn back. I'm not here to listen to your whining." Lillian crossed her arms. "Fine. How much do you want?" "1 gold coin." The soldier replied smugly. Lillian's eyes widened. 1 gold coin. Do you even understand how much that is? You're nothing but thieves disguised as soldiers." Before she could continue, Reign interjected. "Lillian, just give them what they want. It's not worth arguing." Lillian turned to him in disbelief. "Brother Reign, this is too much. They're just trying to rob us." One of the soldiers narrowed his eyes. "Who's inside the carriage? Get out now. No one leaves without verification." The tension in the air thickened. As Reign stepped out of the carriage, a soldier immediately confronted him, demanding, "Who are you?" However, upon noticing Trist, the soldier's expression shifted. "Trist, you're here too," he remarked. Reign, puzzled, turned to Trist. "You know each other?" he asked. Trist's face darkened. "These men were once bandits," he explained. After cooperating with the Edwin family in their illegal dealings, they were given positions as soldiers. Ignoring the accusation, one of the soldiers suddenly pointed at Trist. "You haven't paid your tariffs," he declared before striking him across the face. Trist recoiled, fear evident in his eyes. "I already paid the taxes," he insisted. The soldier, unfazed, leveled his spear at Trist and sneered, "If you want to leave, hand over 5 gold coins." Before Trist could respond, Reign interjected, his tone calm yet firm. "The revenue in Essling City is far too low, yet the taxes here are unreasonably high." The soldier's gaze snapped back to him, irritation flaring in his eyes. "And who exactly are you? Where did you come from?" he demanded. But as his eyes shifted to Leah, his expression changed, his mind filled with vile thoughts as he leered at her. Sensing danger, Trist quickly pulled out 5 gold coins. "Here, take it. Just don't make things difficult for my friends," he pleaded. The soldier snatched the coins greedily, but rather than stepping aside, he took a step toward Leah, his intentions clear. Before he could get any closer, Reign grabbed his wrist in a crushing grip. His voice was cold as he remarked, "At first, I considered using you as free labor, but it seems you're beyond saving." Infuriated, the soldier ripped his arm free and lunged at Reign in a blind rage. However, before he could land a blow, Leah struck. In an instant, the soldier collapsed, lifeless. The remaining soldiers froze, horror flashing across their faces. Reign's expression remained unreadable as he gave a single order: kill them all. Panic surged through the soldiers, and they turned to flee. She killed one of our own. She's a murderer. Someone, help us, they cried. But their pleas were in vain. Leah moved like a shadow, cutting them down one by one with ruthless efficiency. Within moments, every soldier lay dead, their bodies motionless on the cold ground. Reign stood still, his gaze sweeping over the battlefield as he analyzed the soldiers' stats. Every single one of them was below average. A memory surfaced in his mind, his father's advice, a warning not to get involved in wars with other countries. His thoughts solidified. At least now I know for certain, Esling City's soldiers are incapable in battle. If war ever breaks out, they'll be the first to flee. Meanwhile, Leah continued her merciless rampage, cutting down the remaining soldiers with brutal efficiency. Just as the last cries of the dying echoed through the air, a commanding voice boomed across the battlefield: "Who dares to cause trouble at our borders?" The soldiers, who had been moments away from complete despair, suddenly brightened. Confidence returned to their faces as they smirked at one another. General Caesar had arrived. With him here, they believed no one could touch them. Reign, too, turned his attention toward the approaching figure. His eyes narrowed as he analyzed Caesar's stats. He was undeniably talented, far more capable than the rest. If not for his abysmally low loyalty, he might have been a true asset. But as he was now, to Reign, he was nothing more than a burden. "You must be Caesar of the Holker family," Reign said, his voice calm but assertive. "Your brother serves in Prisia's territory." Caesar let out a short chuckle, his expression amused. "And who exactly are you? How do you know about my brother?" Reign met his gaze without hesitation. "Because Reign Edgar is my older sister." A heavy silence fell over the battlefield. The soldiers who had just moments ago been so confident now stared in shock. Even Caesar's amused smirk faded as realization dawned on him. "That means," Caesar muttered, his voice trailing off. His eyes sharpened as a memory surfaced. "His brother's letter, your master Reign, the Grand Duke's youngest son." Caesar recalled the letter his brother had sent him, instructing him to protect young Master Reign in the future. His brother had warned him that Esling City would soon become Reign's territory, making it his duty to ensure the young master's safety. However, a month ago, Eldrick had approached him with a different proposition, bringing a chest overflowing with gold coins. Eldrick had sought to manipulate him. He had claimed that the Grand Duke did not truly value Caesar's talents. Why else would he have assigned him to such a meaningless post? With his abilities, Eldrick had insisted, Caesar deserved a far higher status. Now, standing before Reign, conflicting thoughts warred in his mind. He could honor his brother's command and protect the young master, or he could embrace Eldrick's vision and seize power for himself. Temptation won. His expression hardened as he turned to Reign and declared, "How dare you pretend to be Master Reign?" The soldiers hesitated, confusion flickering across their faces. Raising his voice, Caesar gave the final command, "Everyone, listen to me. Kill this impostor. Whoever slays him will be richly rewarded." Leah warned Caesar sternly, saying, "You're crossing the line. If you take a step toward the Lord Reign, the rebellion will rise, and I won't hesitate to cut you down before that happens." Even the panicked soldiers pleaded, "Lord Caesar, don't do this. Attacking Grand Duke's family is the gravest crime, and it will only bring destruction upon us. There's still time to step back." Caesar, however, dismissed their concerns with disdain. "Fools, have you forgotten what we've been fighting for? We already defied the laws made by the Grand Duke's son and became traitors. There's no point in pretending to be noble now. Besides, this scoundrel has destroyed the Elven family and crushed the other 4 noble families entirely. Anyone who opposes him meets the same fate. Their mistake was sparing him. If they had killed him sooner, they'd have avoided their downfall. I won't make the same mistake." He continued confidently, "Over the years, I've accumulated wealth by plundering. If I behead this runt and flee to the Empire, I guarantee they'll make me a minor noble. I can live the rest of my life peacefully. The choice is yours. Support this scoundrel and face death, or follow me and live a peaceful life." The soldiers, still nervous, pondered their options. They knew staying in this country was pointless. If we side with the general, we might survive, they thought. Meanwhile, Leah realized that Caesar had cunningly manipulated the soldiers, who were now preparing to attack Reign. Determined, the soldiers declared, "We'll follow the general and secure a better life." Caesar, smiling triumphantly, said, "Master Reign, I'm not so cruel that I'd kill you without giving you one last chance. Say your final words." Reign retorted calmly, "If you got down on your knees and begged for forgiveness, I might have spared you, but your arrogance has sealed your fate. You've dug your own grave." Infuriated, Caesar commanded, "What are you all waiting for? Kill him. That runt is a threat to the upcoming battle." Taking out her dagger, Leah cuts off her skirt and throws it away because it would make it difficult for her to fight, and then moves forward to fight. Leah leaped into action, cutting down soldiers with swift precision. Her every move demonstrated the vast difference in skill between her and the soldiers. As she fought, one soldier tried to attack her, but Reign stood unfazed. He knew she would protect him, and she did, saving him just in time. Reign called out to Caesar, "This is your last chance, surrender, or you'll regret your stubbornness. Who knows, I might even let you live." Caesar growled, "I want Reign's head. Whoever brings it to me will get a reward of 1,000 gold coins." The soldiers, blinded by greed, charged at Leah like hungry wolves. When one bald soldier attacked Leah, she swiftly incapacitated him with a single kick. Within seconds, she took down the remaining soldiers with ease. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Caesar ordered his mage, "Quick, finish her off. If she survives, we're all doomed." The magician cast an ice spell aimed at Leah. Initially, Leah believed she had deflected the attacks effortlessly, but she soon realized the spells were designed to immobilize her. They succeeded, leaving Caesar hopeful for the first time in the battle. Seeing an opportunity, Caesar barked, "Now's your chance, kill Reign." Reign, undeterred, threw a hammer toward Leah. "Free yourself and stay in the air. Don't touch the ground for a while," he instructed. Catching the hammer mid-air, Leah broke free from her icy restraints and leaped high into the sky. Reign muttered to himself, "I've spent a lot of time experimenting with lithium batteries and wires. Let's see how useful they are in a fight." With that, he tossed the wire onto the ground. Because most of the soldiers were wearing metal armor, the electricity quickly conducted through it. Reign thought to himself, "This is great, thank goodness for the rubber soles on my shoes, or I'd be getting shocked along with them." The chaos left everyone confused. The soldiers muttered nervously, "Is he using lightning magic?" Reign smirked and said, "I wish I had a video recorder right now. I'd capture this entire scene and show people how important electrical safety is. Maybe they'd start using electricity more responsibly." Meanwhile, Caesar cursed aloud, "How many tricks does this scoundrel have, and why are you all just standing there? Move forward and attack." One trembling soldier replied, "General, you've seen it yourself. Master Reign has used some kind of forbidden skill. Anyone who gets close to him dies mysteriously, and their faces show they're in immense pain. I'm too scared to go near him." Enraged, Caesar decapitated the soldier in a single strike and bellowed, "Those who fear death have no right to live. I have no use for cowards like you. The rest of you have only one option. Die by Reign's hands or mine. You might survive against him, but no one escapes me, and by now, you've seen what happens to those who disobey me." Hesitantly, another soldier stepped forward. To everyone's shock, he wasn't harmed. Leah asked in confusion, "Master, why isn't the magic affecting him?" Reign responded gravely, "To be honest, I only brought one battery to test its power. I think all the earlier attacks drained the energy, which is why it's no longer working." Leah, frustrated, exclaimed, "If that's the case, we need to retreat, otherwise, they'll regroup and attack us again." Reign smiled reassuringly, "Don't worry, Leah, even if reinforcements come, Caesar won't escape his fate today. His death is rushing toward him faster than he can imagine." Caesar, misinterpreting the situation, declared confidently, "It seems this scoundrel's magic is exhausted. Everyone, advance and finish him off. There won't be a better opportunity to kill him." Just as the soldiers moved forward, a massive lightning strike descended from the sky, halting them in their tracks. Caesar, now visibly shaken, stammered, "The Mage Guild, what are they doing here? Their arrival at such a time could spell disaster for me." From the blinding light emerged none other than Selena. She glared at Caesar and said, "Caesar, it seems even dogs have grown bold enough to bark at their masters." Selena turned to Reign with a playful smile and asked, "Young Master Reign, was my timing perfect or not?" Reign replied with a small smirk, "Yes, Selena, it was as perfect as always. And by the way, the lithium battery just ran out of power." Selena's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Wait, did you actually use that battery? How was the effect?" Reign chuckled but kept his tone calm. "After we catch Caesar, I'll tell you everything about the lithium battery." Selena nodded enthusiastically. "All right, young master, then it's time for some lightning action." Turning her attention to the mages gathered behind her, she issued a commanding order, "Magicians of the Mage Guild, annihilate the rebels and show them their place." In an instant, the mages unleashed their devastating attacks. The sheer power of their magic sent shockwaves across the battlefield. The rebel soldiers screamed in terror as the attacks turned their bodies to dust, leaving only an eerie silence in their wake. The sight of the rebels being reduced to dust by the mages' relentless attacks sent shockwaves of fear through the remaining soldiers. Terrified, they abandoned their weapons and fled in a desperate attempt to save their lives. Meanwhile, Caesar stood his ground, his face twisted with anger as he watched his forces crumble. Gritting his teeth, he vowed, "Reign, I'll kill you with my own hands." Suddenly, the mages shifted their focus, directing their attacks toward Caesar. With a powerful leap, he dodged the incoming assault, snarling, "Reign, go to hell." As Caesar's sword sliced through the air, its blade closing in on Reign with deadly precision, Leah appeared out of nowhere. In a stunning display of strength, she intercepted the attack with her bare hand, halting the blade mere inches from Reign. Caesar froze in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief. This mage, she's a nightmare, he thought, panic creeping into his expression. As long as she's by Reign's side, I can't touch him. Without wasting a moment, Leah retaliated. With a single, devastating kick, she sent Caesar hurtling through the air, crashing into a stone wall. The impact sent up a cloud of dust and debris, obscuring the scene for a moment. When the smoke finally cleared, Caesar lay slumped against the wall, unconscious from the sheer force of Leah's strike. His once determined figure was now limp and defeated, unable to continue the fight. When Caesar finally regained consciousness, he opened his eyes to see Reign calmly sitting in front of him, a faint smile on his face. "Ah, you're awake," Reign remarked casually. "I thought it might take you the entire day to recover." Caesar glared at him but remained silent. Reign leaned forward slightly, his tone steady and measured. "You know, Caesar, I've always respected your work as a border guard. For years, you carried out your duties independently, earning both recognition and wealth. But I have to ask, when did you start working for City Lord Eldrick?" Caesar's eyes widened in shock, his composure slipping. "How did you know I was working for Eldrick?" he stammered. Reign's smile deepened, but his gaze turned sharp. "Don't be so surprised. From the very first glance, I can tell what kind of person someone is. And over the years, I've become well aware of how many serpents we've unknowingly raised in our midst." Caesar's breath hitched as Reign continued, his voice unwavering. "When I first met Eldrick, I knew he would eventually rebel against us. I've been waiting for the right moment to expose him, and thanks to you, that moment has finally arrived. You've provided me with the evidence I needed to take Eldrick down red-handed." Caesar chuckled darkly, a sly grin spreading across his face. "You nobles always think you're so smart, but in reality, you're not," he sneered. "City Lord Eldrick is the most corrupt man I've ever encountered. He's cunning beyond measure. As a city lord, he controls the entire region with an iron grip. Sure, as the Grand Duke's son, you have more authority on paper, but here, in this region, you're nothing compared to him." Reign remained unfazed, his calm demeanor unshaken. "You're not wrong, Caesar," he replied evenly. "These pieces of evidence alone aren't enough to bring down someone like Eldrick. They aren't a direct threat to him, but these records, they'll give me something far more valuable, the real tax records of Essling City. With that knowledge, I'll ensure that no one, not Eldrick nor anyone else, can scam the city again. I'll shape Essling City into what it should be." Hearing this, Caesar threw his head back and laughed loudly, the sound echoing in the room. "Transforming Essling City? That's your dream? Let me tell you something, boy, it's a dream that will never come true," he said mockingly. "Eldrick has corrupted every noble in the city. They're all as dirty as he is, and they depend on him like a lifeline. Do you really think those nobles will listen to you? They'll fight tooth and nail to keep their precious system intact. Your dream of transformation is nothing but a fantasy." Reign smirked, his sharp gaze fixed on Caesar. "Caesar," he said, his voice calm yet menacing, "let me tell you something. A living person can be called a noble, but the dead, they aren't nobles or commoners. They're just corpses. You're a smart man. I'm sure you understand exactly what my words mean." Caesar's confidence faltered, and a wave of fear washed over him. His face darkened, beads of sweat forming on his brow, each one a testament to the terror gripping him. His voice trembled as he said, "Reign, do you realize what you're planning will turn all of Essling City into a river of blood? You can't kill all the nobles in the city." Reign leaned forward, his tone cold but resolute. "I'm not a cruel monarch, Caesar," he replied. "I'm giving the nobles of Essling City two choices. The first, they can continue following Eldrick down his path of corruption, which will ultimately lead them to a horrific death. The second, they can choose to follow me, obey my orders, and work toward a brighter future for the city. Together, we can make Essling a place where every single person has an opportunity to thrive." He paused, his smirk returning. "And you know the nobles of this city, don't you, Caesar? They're clever. What do you think they'll choose when faced with those two options?" Later, Reign deepened thought as he began calculating the city's future. His sharp eyes scanned a map spread across the table, his mind already working through the challenges ahead. Every year, during the autumn season, Grand Duke Soren sends his troops to attack the borders. Reign muttered to himself, and given the current state of Essling City, we're far from prepared for such a conflict. The city walls, which are already severely damaged, must be repaired immediately. In their current condition, they won't hold against an enemy assault for long. His gaze shifted to the map, his fingers tracing the territories surrounding the city. The Western Territory is under Saint Era's control, he noted thoughtfully. She'll likely negotiate with the elves to ensure peace in that region. If successful, we won't have to worry about war there. He moved his hand to another part of the map. To the east lies my second sister's territory. Knowing her, I can rest assured that this area is secure. I don't have to concern myself with that region either. Finally, his focus settled on the Northern Territory, where Essling City shared its border with Grand Duke Soren. Reign's expression grew grim. "The real problem lies in the north," he said quietly. "The possibility of war in that territory is extremely high. We must prepare for the worst." Leah interrupted Reign's train of thought, her tone steady but urgent. "We've successfully seized the border fortress," she reported, "and in doing so, we secured 350,000 gold coins." Reign nodded, processing the information quickly. Good work, order the fortress guards to come here first. They'll take over the defenses at the border. Once they're here, reward each of them with 100 gold coins for their loyalty and service, he instructed. Also, prepare the carriages, we're heading back to Esling City. A short while later, Reign approached his carriage, where Selena was waiting for him with a cheerful expression. As he climbed in, he thanked her. Selena, I appreciate the Mage Guild's efforts, you've all worked hard. Selena smiled, brushing off the praise with a wave of her hand. It's nothing. For the mages, tasks like these are a piece of cake. Her expression brightened with curiosity as she shifted the conversation. By the way, young master, about the lithium batteries, can you explain how they discharge energy, and how can we refill them? Reign chuckled softly at her eagerness. All right, I'll explain it to you on the way back to Esling City. But be patient, I'll go through it slowly. Selena opened her mouth to thank him, but before she could, Malcolm rushed toward them, his face pale and his voice shaky. Young master, there's a problem, he exclaimed. Selena frowned, crossing her arms. Why are you panicking? Take a breath and tell us what happened, she said firmly. Malcolm swallowed hard before blurting out, his voice laced with shock. Eldrick has rebelled against us. He's taken over Esling City. The atmosphere grew tense as his words sank in, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on everyone. Hearing Malcolm's news, Selena froze in shock, her usual composure shaken. In contrast, Reign remained unnervingly calm, as if he had anticipated this turn of events. Reign's expression remained unreadable as he thought to himself, Eldrick has reached his limit. He couldn't withstand the pressure of my plans any longer. This rebellion was inevitable. Selena, her voice tense and tinged with regret, asked anxiously, Master, what should we do to protect you? I brought all the mages of the Mage Guild here. That bastard Eldrick must have seen this as the perfect opportunity to take over the city and rebel against us. Reign turned to her, his voice steady and reassuring. There's no need to worry, Selena, he said calmly. Eldrick has always been a cunning man, meticulous and careful to avoid making mistakes, but the moment he decided to rebel and seize control of the city, he had already sealed his fate. He's lost, even if he doesn't realize it yet. Reign's unwavering composure gave her a sense of reassurance that, somehow, they were still in control of the situation. As Reign stood before the sealed city gates with his army, he called out for Eldrick, demanding an explanation for the closure. Eldrick, standing atop the gate, observed the scene below with evident satisfaction. With a smirk, he asked, Young master, is there some problem with our Esling City today? Reign's voice carried the weight of accusation as he questioned why Eldrick had betrayed his father. At this, Eldrick's expression darkened, and his voice rose with anger. He retorted that Reign was only asking now because he had chosen to rebel, yet for years, he had asked Reign's father why he had been cast aside, why he had been banished to the weakest city in the entire country, a place no one wanted to govern. He recounted how he and Reign's father had once joined forces with the shared ambition of building an empire, but while Reign's father had risen to become a great noble, Eldrick had been discarded, abandoned to a desolate city unworthy of his efforts. He had believed that his loyalty would be rewarded, that he would be granted a better post, but instead, he and his family had been condemned to a place he considered nothing more than a wasteland. With bitterness, Eldrick admitted that he had written countless letters, pleading for a transfer, yet not once had he received a reply. His resentment had only grown with each passing year. Fixing Reign with a cold stare, he declared that if anyone was to blame, it was not him, but Reign's father, whom he branded as ruthless, selfish, and utterly heartless. Eldrick looked down at Reign from the city gate, his voice filled with conviction as he spoke. He reminded Reign that the people standing with him had once served his father, but due to his father's treatment of others, they had all turned against him. This, he claimed, was not a rebellion, it was merely them taking what was rightfully theirs. Reign, unimpressed by Eldrick's justification, scoffed and accused him of making weak excuses for his betrayal. He had expected Eldrick, known for his wisdom and cunning, to have a far better reason for turning against his father. Looking at the assembled nobles, he declared that because they had served his father for so long, he was offering them a final chance to surrender. However, if they refused, he warned that within 3 days, they would come to regret their decision. Hearing this, the nobles on Eldrick's side erupted into laughter, mocking Reign. They jeered that he must have taken some kind of drug to be speaking so boldly. One of them sneered that Reign wouldn't even be able to set foot inside the city gate in 3 days, let alone make them regret their actions. Amused by Reign's confidence, Eldrick smirked and issued a challenge. If Reign was so certain that he would make them regret their decision in 3 days, then why not place a bet? His voice rang out over the city walls as he proposed the terms. If Reign failed to break through the city's defenses within the given time, he would have to surrender in front of Eldrick. Reign's expression remained firm as he asked what kind of bet Eldrick had in mind. Eldrick, his tone filled with arrogance, repeated his terms in an even louder voice, ensuring everyone heard. The challenge had been set, and the fate of Esling City would be decided in the coming days. Reign met Eldric's gaze without hesitation and asked what would happen if he succeeded in breaking through the city gates. In response, Eldric smirked and declared that if Reign managed to do so, he would surrender before him. His tone was laced with challenge as he addressed Reign directly, asking if he had the courage to gamble on such high stakes. Before Reign could respond, Selena stepped forward and advised him against making a reckless bet. She reminded him that the Grand Duke's army would arrive in a few days, and until then, they could fight strategically, wearing down the enemy rather than rushing into unnecessary risks. Leah nodded in agreement, stating that once the Grand Duke's reinforcements arrived, their victory would be assured. There was no need to wager everything on a hasty decision. Eldric, sensing hesitation, seized the opportunity to provoke Reign further. With a mocking tone, he accused him of being afraid to accept the bet, claiming that talking big was easy, but taking action required true courage. He sneered that Reign was the type of man who boasted grandly yet lacked the determination to follow through on his words. Reign's expression remained firm as he met Eldric's taunting gaze. With unwavering confidence, he declared that if Eldric had the audacity to make such a bet, then he should prepare himself to lose and honor the promise he had made. He added that in his dictionary, the word defeat did not exist. Eldric let out a short laugh and announced to everyone present that Reign had officially accepted the bet. He warned him not to go back on his word after facing defeat. Then, as if recalling an important detail, he smirked and revealed one last piece of news. Word of his rebellion had already spread like wildfire. The Orvis Empire's military had learned of his defiance and was now planning an attack. Fixing his gaze back on Reign, Eldric taunted him once more, saying that in just 10 days, he would not only have to face him but also the approaching enemy army. With a smirk, he added that he had no doubt their brave young master would not flee upon seeing the enemy forces closing in. The scene shifted to Reign's base camp, where he had gathered all key figures to discuss their next course of action. The atmosphere was tense as they deliberated on their strategy. Selena was the first to speak, voicing her concerns. She acknowledged that while Essling City's walls were weak, breaching them in such a short time would still be a difficult task. Another soldier stepped forward, expressing his worries about the growing danger of their current location. He suggested that Reign should not remain in such a perilous situation. However, Reign remained calm, his voice steady as he addressed the group. He stated that Eldric and Essling City were not their primary concerns. The real threat lay in the approaching Orvis Empire army. His focus was on devising a plan to handle them under these difficult circumstances. Turning to Leah, he asked if she had gathered the firewood grass as he had instructed. Leah immediately confirmed that they had collected a significant amount from the nearby lake, even more than what he had originally requested. Satisfied, Reign then looked at Selena and gave her a new task. He instructed her to use her magic to freeze the lake, ensuring that the temperature dropped below 0 degrees Celsius. His command left Selena momentarily puzzled. She couldn't understand what he intended to do. Despite her confusion, she hesitated only briefly before asking how these preparations would help them break through Essling City's walls. Reign, maintaining his composed demeanor, reassured her that once everything was in place, they would understand his plan soon enough. With that, the meeting continued, as each person prepared to carry out their assigned tasks. Reign stood at the front lines, his gaze firm as he raised his arm. The signal was given. His soldiers, carrying nothing but bundles of firewood, dried grass, and shields, charged forward. There were no swords, no spears, just an odd assortment of seemingly harmless materials. Yet, with unwavering determination, they rushed toward the towering walls of the city. From atop the fortress, Eldric watched the scene unfold, his expression shifting from intrigue to outright confusion. His keen eyes scanned the battlefield, but not a single enemy soldier carried a weapon. Instead, they flung the firewood and grass against the sturdy stone walls. "What in the world is this?" Eldric muttered, his brows knitting together in frustration. He turned sharply to his nearest officer. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" The soldier hesitated, clearly just as puzzled. "No, my lord, this is the first time I've witnessed such an attack." After a brief pause, he speculated, "Perhaps they intend to set fire to the city walls?" Eldric's irritation flared. Without warning, he delivered a swift punch to the soldier's arm, making the man stumble back in surprise. "Idiot!" Eldric snapped. "How can fire burn stone? Do you take me for a fool?" Before the soldier could stammer a response, another messenger sprinted toward them, panting. He barely managed to salute before blurting out, "My lord, they've set fire to the wood." Eldric's lips curled into a smirk as he crossed his arms. "Young Master Reign truly is a fool," he scoffed. "What kind of ridiculous tactic is this? Fire cannot destroy these walls. He's only embarrassing himself." One of his commanders stepped forward, concern flickering in his eyes. "Shall we deploy our mages to extinguish the fire? Our archers have been shooting, but their arrows aren't having much effect on them." Eldric waved a dismissive hand. "No, don't waste our resources. The mages will be needed when the real battle begins. As for our arrows, save them for a worthy fight. In 3 days, Reign will be utterly humiliated. and this pathetic attempt at strategy will cost him everything. With unwavering confidence, Eldrick turned his attention back to the battlefield, convinced that victory was already his. He couldn't even begin to fathom the deeper scheme hidden behind Reign's seemingly foolish actions. 3 days had passed since the start of the unusual siege, and inside City Lord Eldrick's mansion, the atmosphere was lively. The grand hall buzzed with conversation and laughter, as nobles and commanders drank and feasted, celebrating in anticipation of Reign's imminent failure. The young master of the Grand Duke had issued a bold challenge, but to everyone watching, his plan had seemed nothing short of laughable. Amidst the revelry, a soldier entered hastily, his boots clicking sharply against the polished floor. Bowing respectfully, he delivered his report. "Lord Eldrick, the enemy troops have stopped lighting fires." At those words, Eldrick paused, setting his goblet down with a smirk. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Then, standing up, he let out a short chuckle. "Those fools must have burned through all their firewood. It was obvious their ridiculous plan wouldn't last. They've lost confidence. They know they've failed," he declared, his voice brimming with satisfaction. He then looked around at his gathered officers and nobles, his gaze sharp with amusement. "Come, all of you, let us witness Reign's humiliation together. That arrogant whelp, young Master Reign, the Grand Duke's son, has no choice but to surrender before me." I wouldn't want to miss the look on his face. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Everyone had been waiting for this moment, the grand conclusion to Reign's foolish 3-day bet. The terms were simple. If he could not breach the city within 3 days, he would be considered the loser. And now, as the sun neared the horizon, his failure was all but certain. For 3 days, his army had done nothing but set firewood ablaze near the city walls. They hadn't attacked, they hadn't advanced, they had simply burned and burned, creating a continuous wall of heat and smoke that had puzzled Eldrick and his men. Now, with their firewood seemingly exhausted, the game was over. Still, curiosity stirred among the nobles. The heat from the flames had made the walls nearly unbearable to touch, forcing even the city's own soldiers to stand back from the stone barriers. But what had Reign truly hoped to accomplish with this? Did he actually believe fire alone would bring down their great defenses? Even as the walls smoldered under the lingering heat, Eldrick felt nothing but contempt for Reign's tactics. Victory was his, and so, with eager steps, they made their way toward the city walls, confident that they were about to witness the young master's public disgrace. At the city walls, the air outside was thick with the remnants of smoke, the last wisps of heat shimmering above the blackened stone. Eldrick stood at the battlements, his eyes locking onto the figure standing across from him, the ever-stubborn young Master Reign. Even now, Reign's posture remained firm, his expression unreadable. Eldrick couldn't help but laugh as he raised his voice, his tone dripping with mockery. "What's the matter, Reign? Have you finally realized how foolish your plan was? Why have you stopped setting the walls on fire? Don't tell me you've given up." Standing tall before the city walls, Reign's voice rang out with unwavering authority as he addressed Eldrick and the gathered nobles. "City Lord Eldrick, all of you standing by his side, you are well aware of the crimes you have committed, and yet, despite that, I will offer you one final chance." His piercing gaze swept over the nobles, his tone filled with both judgment and certainty. "You have 2 choices: surrender now and accept your fate, or cling to your arrogance and prepare to meet your terrible deaths." His words carried across the battlefield, his army standing silently behind him, awaiting the inevitable response. Eldrick let out a chuckle, shaking his head in amusement as he stepped forward. His voice was laced with mockery and disbelief. "Young Master Reign, I often wonder, where does your confidence come from?" he said with a smirk. "Do you even stop to think before you speak, or do you simply enjoy making a fool of yourself?" The nobles behind him laughed, nodding in agreement. Eldrick continued, his tone growing sharper. "We are the ones in the winning position, yet you dare suggest that we should surrender. It seems you have conveniently forgotten about the 3-day bet." His eyes gleamed with amusement as he folded his arms. "But don't worry, if your memory fails you, allow me to remind you, today marks the final day of the bet. Before sunset, if you fail to break through the city gates, you must surrender before me. That was the agreement, was it not? As the son of the Grand Duke, surely you would not go back on your word?" His words were met with nods of approval from the assembled nobles. Among them, several family heads joined in the mockery, their voices carrying the same derision. "You still have time, young Master Reign," one of them jeered. "Don't waste it standing there, making empty threats. Shouldn't you be focusing on how to break the gates?" Another noble added with a smirk. "Whatever you attempt now will be meaningless. Bold words alone won't change reality." Laughter rippled through Eldrick's ranks as another noble sneered. "To achieve victory, one must have a proper strategy, not just blind confidence. That is why our City Lord Eldrick stands victorious today." Their taunts filled the air, the nobles reveling in their supposed triumph. Yet, even as they spoke, Reign remained unmoved, his expression unshaken. Reign let out a sigh, shaking his head as he regarded Eldrick and his men with cold indifference. His voice carried a finality that sent a slight shiver through the air. "It seems there is no point in offering you a chance," he said, his tone laced with disappointment. But remember, this is the path you have chosen. Whatever happens next, do not blame me for it." Then, without hesitation, he turned his gaze toward Selena and issued his command, "Selena, proceed as planned." At his words, Selena stepped forward, her expression calm yet filled with lethal determination. Lightning crackled around her fingertips as she began to channel her magic, preparing to unleash an attack that would decide the course of the battle. Seeing this, Eldrick's expression darkened and he immediately barked an order to his mages, "Form a barrier." Now, his voice carried urgency, and though his mages rushed to obey, an unmistakable tension filled the air. Even among them, fear flickered in their eyes, for they were about to face Selena's devastating magic. The barrier took shape, a shimmering wall of energy forming in front of them. The gathered nobles watched with anticipation, convinced that Reign's reckless gamble was about to fail once more. Then, with a final surge of power, Selena unleashed her attack. A brilliant arc of lightning streaked through the air, its raw energy crackling with overwhelming force. Eldrick's mages braced themselves, their barrier fully reinforced and ready to absorb the blow. But in the next instant, something unexpected happened. Instead of striking the defensive barrier, the lightning suddenly shifted its trajectory, veering sharply, straight toward the city gate. A stunned silence fell over Eldrick's forces as they watched the attack land, its impact sending a deafening boom through the battlefield. Dust and smoke billowed into the air, obscuring the gates as everyone struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. Even Eldrick's most seasoned mage stared in confusion, his voice hesitant as he finally broke the silence. "What just happened?" For a moment, there was only quiet. Then, Eldrick threw back his head and laughed, his amusement echoing through the battlefield. "Nothing at all," he said dismissively, his voice dripping with mockery. "Just another foolish act from a fool." Did he truly believe that Selena's attack alone could break the city gates? His nobles joined in his laughter, their confidence unwavering. To them, Reign had once again proven himself reckless and naive. A single drop of water landed on Eldrick's face. He instinctively wiped it away, but as he glanced at the sky, his expression shifted. The once clear heavens had darkened, and the gentle breeze had turned into a biting wind. It had begun to rain. A deep unease settled in his chest. When did the weather change? He wondered. Meanwhile, at the foot of the towering city walls, Reign stood amidst his army, his gaze sharp and unwavering. The rhythmic pounding of rain against armor filled the air as he raised his arm in command. "Proceed as planned," he ordered. Without hesitation, the soldiers surged forward, shields raised, each carrying a heavy bucket filled to the brim with icy water. Their boots splashed against the wet ground as they raced toward the towering walls. Reign cast a fleeting glance toward Selena. She stood beside him, her usually vibrant presence now weakened, her breath unsteady. Yet, despite her fatigue, she had done the impossible. She changed the weather itself. Reign marveled. With just a single attack, she shifted the tides of battle. This power, this moment, will lead us to victory. Selena's lips parted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Young master, will everything be okay?" Reign turned to her, his expression firm yet reassuring. "Don't worry," he said. "Once the icy water touches the city walls, they will crack beyond repair. Victory is within our grasp." Before another word could be spoken, Leah, standing nearby, gasped and pointed toward the fortress. "Young master, look at the walls." Reign's gaze snapped to the battlefield. The first wave of soldiers had already reached the city's defenses, tilting their buckets forward. Water cascaded down in shimmering streams, clinging to the cold stone before seeping into every crevice. For a brief moment, silence fell, then crack, a faint, almost imperceptible sound, then another, and another. The cracks spread like veins across the walls, threading through the ancient stone. The soldiers took a step back, eyes wide with anticipation. High above, Eldrick's unease twisted into outright alarm as the ominous noise reached his ears. He turned sharply toward the walls, his heart pounding. This isn't possible, he thought. The city walls have withstood countless sieges. These small attacks should mean nothing. But then the ground trembled. It started as a subtle vibration beneath his feet, but within moments, it grew into a violent quake that rattled the fortress itself. The nobles surrounding him, their faces once filled with confidence, now turned pale with fear. Murmurs of doubt turned into frantic questions. "What's happening?" one noble shouted. "Why is everything shaking?" This shouldn't be possible," another cried. Eldrick clenched his fists, trying to regain control of the moment. "Stay calm," he barked. "The walls will hold." But as the words left his mouth, the city itself betrayed him. A deafening crack split the air as massive chunks of stone broke away, crashing to the ground below. Screams erupted as soldiers and nobles alike lost their balance, thrown into chaos. The once mighty walls, the pride of the city, shattered like fragile glass, crumbling into a cascade of ruin. Eldrick's breath caught in his throat. He had prepared for war, he had braced for an attack, but this was complete devastation. As the city walls crumbled into ruins, a dense cloud of dust and smoke engulfed the entire area. The battlefield fell into momentary silence, broken only by the distant sounds of debris crashing to the ground. Reign, standing at the front of his advancing army, raised his sword high and commanded in a firm, unwavering voice, "The city walls have fallen. This is our moment. Attack." His voice rang out over the battlefield, steady and resolute. "Whoever surrenders and does not resist will only be arrested, but anyone who dares to defy us, anyone who still harbors rebellion, will be cut down without hesitation." His gaze swept across his men as he added coldly, "It no longer matters what their rank or status is. If they fight back, they will die on the spot." Without delay, Reign's army surged forward, moving swiftly through the ruined city walls. Soldiers stormed the battlefield, securing key positions and subduing the remaining defenders. Amidst the chaos, Selena stood still, her eyes wide with disbelief. She watched as the mighty walls, which she had believed to be impenetrable, lay in complete devastation. Her heart pounded as the realization settled in. This was no ordinary destruction. Even with her most powerful attack, she had never been capable of inflicting such overwhelming damage, and yet, young Master Reign had done it, without magic, without spells. How is this possible, she thought, struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. Reign turned to her, his voice calm but resolute. "Selena, it's time to go home. There's nothing more the enemy can do now." For a moment, she hesitated, still absorbing everything that had unfolded before her, but as she looked at Reign, she saw no hesitation in his eyes, only certainty. Slowly, she nodded and followed his lead. Meanwhile, amidst the ruins of the fallen city, Eldrick staggered forward, his body battered and wounded. Pain throbbed through his limbs, but it was nothing compared to the weight of his realization. From the beginning, I was too confident, he thought bitterly. I underestimated young Master Reign far too much. His fingers curled into fists as the truth dawned upon him. He had never stood a chance. From the very start, he had been caught in Reign's trap, blindly believing in his own strength while the enemy had already outmaneuvered him. Yet, despite his injuries, a flicker of hope remained. He glanced around and saw that in the chaos, no one seemed to have noticed him. His breath hitched. This is my chance. If he could escape now and reach the reinforcements from the Orvis Empire, he would survive. He could rebuild. He could still turn the tide. Summoning the last of his strength, he prepared to slip away into the shadows. But before he could take another step, an unsettling sensation crept over him. Something was wrong. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he noticed a group of nobles standing in his path. Their faces, once filled with trust and certainty in his leadership, were now twisted with fury. Their eyes burned with betrayal. Eldrick froze as they stepped forward, blocking his escape. One of them, his voice laced with anger, demanded, "Where do you think you're going?" Another sneered, his tone dripping with resentment. "After everything you've done, after leading us to ruin, do you really believe you can just walk away?" The weight of their glares pressed down on Eldrick like an unshakable burden. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized he was no longer their leader, he was their enemy. And just like that, everything changed. A single moment, a single decision, and now, there's no turning back. But what comes next? Enemies are closing in, secrets are unraveling, and a fate far worse than death awaits those who are unprepared. Can they survive what's coming, or is this the beginning of the end? One thing is certain, the next episode will be more intense, more shocking, and more thrilling than ever before. Don't